Hello, welcome to the live stream for March 8th, 2017. My name is Dana Morningstar and I am your host. So welcome. If you're new here, please make yourself as at home as much as you possibly can and feel free to jump into the chat. It can be very fast moving at times. And that can be a little bit overwhelming or a lot overwhelming for people when they're new here. So if you're feeling that way, just know that you're not alone in that. And there's no such thing as a bad question or a stupid question or really kind of any questions open as long as it's sincere, and I'm open to asking or answering or asking, I guess, any question. We can just go from there. It's all about the discussion that happens. So if you're watching this like the next day, just kind of FYI, I really feel like there's so much that goes on in the chat that if you're watching this video after this has been recording, it's totally different experience when you're here and it's live and it's going. So just, I don't know, if you can join us live at some point, it's just fun. It's a totally different experience, but if not, I totally understand as well. So welcome to everybody hopping on. Peace Pom Pom is here. Bob, Lucy, hello. Donna, interested. Carrie, Helene, Mala, Robin, Shara. Welcome, welcome. Clock 99, Diana, hello. MT, Allison. Interested says, is the live chat every week? Yes, it is. Thank you for mentioning that. So it is. It's every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we go for about 2 to 3 hours, just depending. If you have questions the other 6 days of the week, like most people do, right? I do have 2 different support groups. You can find out information about both of them on my website, which is called thriveafterabuse.com. I have a group on Facebook. I have a group on my website. They're a similar concept, but a little bit different. Just kind of depends on what you're looking for. And as far as, privacy and I guess ease of being in a support group, it's a lot easier, to be in a support group on Facebook if you're already on Facebook. But just kind of depends on what works for you. So I would recommend that if you're looking for support or feedback any other time too. Also, the other big benefit of support groups, and not just mine, I always encourage people to join a handful because every group is going to have different rules. It's going to be run a little bit different ways. Sometimes there's personality conflicts. There's just kind of this, it's people. Like it's a bunch of traumatized people generally helping a bunch of other traumatized people. And there's a lot that can go on with that dynamic. So I think it can be helpful to join a handful of different groups, see which one resonates with you the best, and then kind of go from there. But the benefit of the support group is that you're not just hearing from me. You're hearing from thousands, tens of thousands of other people that have been there, done that. And even though what we've all been through is very similar, it's amazing how many different variations of that abuse can take. And so I think it can help to join a handful of different groups and to tell parts of your story that you're comfortable with sharing, and just reading a ton of the different posts that other people have to say, and just kind of the validation and clarity that comes from a lot of the other people in a group is tremendous. Okay, so lots of great questions. Okay, I'm going to hop in with Marie's question because I think this is a fantastic one that I've been meaning to bring up for a long time now. So Marie asks, where do we go to meet healthy potential partners? Anyone? So I see this very similar question phrased in a different way. So there's a lot of people that talk about avoiding certain online dating sites because they tend to be kind of havens or breeding grounds for highly problematic people. And there's some truth to this. However, there are predatory people out there. It doesn't matter. There is no safe place. Like they are just out there. They're in life. I'm not saying this to scare people, but they are out there. So I think what people, when they tend to ask this question, they're like, where can I go that there's going to be healthy people? If you are still at that place where you really doubt your judgment and you're not sure of the difference between like problematic behavior and healthy behavior, and this takes time. There is definitely no judgment here. This is something I still struggle with from time to time. So it's not that we ever get fully there. I think it's normal to question, like, what am I experiencing? Is it me? Is it me? Is it them? Like, is this problematic? Is this workable? There's still kind of always that uncertainty there. Most people, I think any healthy person, frankly, has that because it's still a strange thing to encounter strange behavior. So with that said, the only way to meet healthy people is to become really healthy yourself. So this way you can walk into any environment, any online dating site, any in-person group, and you know what problematic behavior is, and you know how, more importantly, how it feels. Because that'll tell you all you need to know within a very short amount of time. Problematic behavior feels problematic. It feels confusing. It feels, kind of feels off-putting. It feels strange. It feels, it might make you feel uncomfortable. It might make you feel angry, resentful, like your boundaries are being pushed. When you start questioning, is it them or is it me? It's generally them, kind of in a nutshell. So if you can kind of pay attention to, and this is where it helps in the book, Psychopath Free. Again, I love the book. I love this concept of a constant that he came up with, where think about how you are around people that you trust. So for me, my constant is my brother. I know how I feel around my brother. And he's a good guy, so I feel consistently safe, secure, comfortable. We have open, honest, sincere, solutions-oriented communication. So that's how I normally feel. I don't feel like I have to second guess his motivations. I don't feel unsafe or uncertain or wondering, is he putting me down, or is it him, or is it me, or what's going on? I don't have that confusion, that self-doubt, those feelings of unpleasantness. I'm not rehashing conversations that we had late into the night. There's none of that. It's just this, it feels empowering. It feels energizing. It feels, refreshing to be around him. And so that's kind of a great way. So this concept of a constant is a great way to kind of do a gut check to see if this is a safe person for you. And again, support groups can be great for this too, because as you're getting back out there, it can be very easy to mistake love bombing for love and for intensity for sincerity. And that just takes time and it takes practice. So when people are getting back out into like the dating game, I strongly encourage them, start off by making some friends with some new people. That I think will be very telling. So, if you're finding that you're making healthy friends, then odds are that's a good indicator of kind of where your radar is for healthy people or problematic people. And it's much easier to detach from a friend than it is to detach from a boyfriend or a girlfriend. So if you can kind of move slowly and just navigate that territory with in a dynamic that there's not all of this emotional investment in, like there is in a relationship, that can be a really great way to go. But so back to your question. So meeting healthy people really depends on bringing your your healthiest self to the table, and knowing and trusting yourself enough to be able to walk away from anything that feels problematic, and to not stay in there feeling that you need to justify it or work on things, or telling yourself that nobody's perfect or what have you, because it's really easy to stay in the wrong relationship if we're lonely, if we're scared, if really those reasons, like lonely or being scared. So, but some people will say, okay, well, avoid the free dating sites out there because those attract a lot of people, that are looking for sex, or that are married looking for sex, or what have you. But the reality is they're just problematic people on every website. And even the ones like Christian Mingle or Catholic Singles, or, what have you, those sometimes those can even be worse because predators know certain people drop their guard around certain things that give the illusion of safety. So this is why predators will pretend. A lot of the Catholic priests, right, that were molesting children, people thought, okay, our kids are going to be safe. They're priests, right? And they weren't. So kind of the best hiding place for evil is behind good, kind of a thing. So oftentimes you'll get problematic people that are like, oh, my grandfather, he was a minister, and he was a narcissist, and he was a womanizer, and was a really terrible human being, but he had everybody fooled. So it's important to see the behavior and not get blindsided by their religion or by their profession. Again, people think, okay, well, this person's a police officer, so I can trust them, or they're a firefighter, so I can trust them, or they're a therapist, so I can trust them. And that may or may not be true. Time will tell, and paying attention to how you feel will tell you what you need. And of course, too, I think educating yourself as much as you possibly can about what is problematic behavior, because once that veil has been lifted and you're able to spot the problematic behavior for what it is, and you're like, oh, that's gaslighting, that's projection. Like once you have the words for these things, it makes it so much easier to spot. Whereas before you might have been in the fog wondering, is it them? Is it me? Am I crazy? Am I the problem? Am I too sensitive? Am I too emotional? Like you're just lost in the fog. But if you have the words to describe what you're experiencing, then everything really starts making sense. So I hope that helps. So basically, bring your highest and best self to the table. Walk away from anything that doesn't empower or enhance. Basically, anything. The goal is to go towards what gives you energy. Go towards the people and the experiences and the things that give you energy, and distance yourself from everything that takes energy. It really kind of just boils down to that. And so paying attention to how do you feel? How do you feel? Do you feel energized? Do you feel refreshed? Do you feel relaxed? Do you feel safe and secure? Or do you feel drained and exhausted and depressed and anxious? That's the beauty of our emotions, is they are a sign. They are our main sign as to kind of where we are and what needs to be adjusted in our life. They're not things to run from or to try to, tune out. Even though they're painful, they're really designed to work in our highest and greatest good, and to help keep us safe, and to help move us forward into kind of our highest and greatest self, if we can see them in that way. So, okay, that was kind of a long answer. I hope that helps. Okay. Let's see. Mala, that's a great question. Okay, hold on a second here. Let me take a sip of my tea. Oh, it's still really hot. Okay, Mala asks, what can I do to let go of the hate? Oh, that is such a fantastic question. And it's such an important question that so many people struggle with, and something I struggled with for a long time too. And I still have flashes where that rage bubbles up, and it's scary. When I was going through this, I had so much rage inside of me. I had never felt like that before, and it was almost unbearable. So it can be really, really intense. So what helps with the rage? I think what helps with the rage is to try to make that the power of hate, the power of rage, work towards your highest and greatest good and work towards the highest and greatest good of others. So we've talked about this before, but like becoming what I call like an emotional alchemist. So you have the energy from this one event. And if you can take that energy and visualize yourself transmuting it, sort of like the alchemists of the olden days, right? They were trying to turn lead into gold. If you're trying to turn hate into love, or hate into joy, might be a better way to say that. Hate into joy. That's the jump you've got to make. So how do you do something like that? And I think it helps to first off start with making the declaration that you're not going to let this destroy your life. Just setting that intention. It's just sort of setting a course. Like you have to kind of know where you want to go in order to start the journey. Because if you don't, then it's really easy to just wander aimlessly through the desert. So if you're setting this as this is the goal, like, or at least one of the goals along the way. The goal is I'm not going to let this ruin my life. And then once you can become okay with that, because that can feel really heavy for a lot of people. That felt really, when I had that like aha moment, that felt really heavy to me. It felt like, I don't know if I can honestly say that, because I really felt like my life had been ruined. I lost everything. So everything. So but knowing that, okay, I don't know how I'm not going to let this ruin my life long term. I just know that I need to at least make that clear in my own mind. And then the second part of that is, okay, because once you start believing that, of like, okay, I'm just setting the intention, I'm not going to let this ruin my life. I don't know how, God, universe, highest and greatest good, whatever you want to call this energy, universal consciousness, whatever you're comfortable with, realizing that you want to use this for your highest and greatest good. So that's the next step. Then once you kind of make peace with that, then thinking to yourself, okay, I want to use this towards the highest and greatest good of other people. And once you start turning your pain into your power, that's when a lot of things shift within a person, where it's like, okay, good can come out of this. Positivity can come from negativity. But that's the challenge, because with so much pain, with so much negativity, it really feels like you're in a black hole. Like, no, there's nothing else that can exist in my life other than this. Like, I'm in this, and maybe someday, given enough time or therapy or something, I hope maybe I'll be able to climb out of this hole. And then once I do that, then I'll start living my life. Then maybe I can find happiness or joy again. But life doesn't work like that. But there's good and bad to that, okay? First of all, it doesn't work like that. And second of all, it doesn't work like that. So the benefit to it not working like that means you can start bringing joy into your life now. Even though you have hate towards this person and towards what happened, and like overwhelming amounts of rage, you can still allow yourself to experience gratitude. You can still allow yourself to experience joy and love and all of these other things and still have this here. Now your brain is going to want you to continue to focus on the anger, focus on the pain, focus on the hate, because these are very deep-seated primitive emotions, and our brains are kind of hardwired that way to stay away. Our brains are designed to keep us away from danger. And so dangerous situations, it's just how we're wired. They get more of our attention. So if you can realize that a lot of this isn't necessarily like you, it's our brains. It's a human brain thing. It's not a you thing. So knowing that, okay, this is how the kind of the human brain is wired, to make the decision and start practicing this. And it can be really difficult because your brain is going to want to hold on to this hate. If you can practice putting the hate down and being like, okay, I'm going to go experience joy right now, or I'm going to go experience fun or peace, some sort of positive emotion, right? Calm, relaxation, love, friendship, kind of what have you, anything that's like connection, positive emotions, allowing yourself to, maybe 10 minutes at a time. And the more time you spend on that side of the scale, like the positive side, where like, okay, I'm going to go play with my dog at the park. I'm going to go to the dog park for an hour. And during that time, I'm really going to try to be in the moment, and I'm really going to play with my dog, and it's going to be okay. I'm going to allow myself to just have fun in the moment. It doesn't mean that I'm minimizing what happened to me. It doesn't mean that it's not still there. All it means is that I'm not going to allow this to consume my life. And then when I'm done with the dog park, I can pick up that hatred again. There's so much power that comes in this with bringing awareness to your emotions and realizing you don't need to have, your emotions don't need to be dependent upon a situation. Like there's so much power to that. Like you can decide, okay, I'm going to go embrace this emotion right now. I'm going to go feel like, don't wait for like a gratitude or joy to kind of descend upon you. Make the decision of, okay, I'm going to spend the next 15 minutes being grateful. So it becomes a very intentional practice. I'm going to spend time being grateful. It's such a cool thing to realize you don't need to wait for something to happen. Like you can just feel this way anytime you want. You can feel joy. And sometimes it helps to kind of give yourself some momentum to think about, okay, what is like the path of least resistance to feeling these emotions? Because if a person, and I get it because I was there too, if you've been stuck in that anger, that rage, that hatred for a long time, it can feel like there is no way out. And like, well, Dana, I can go to the dog park, I can do these things, I don't feel joy. Like I feel numb. Or I can go, I can try to feel, try to laugh or try to have connection. I just don't feel it. And that's okay too. Try to provoke those emotions in yourself. So do you have a favorite song that puts you in a positive mood? Do you have a comedy or a movie that normally has made you feel a certain way? Do you have certain people that you really enjoy that you tend to leave feeling a certain way? So once you kind of get used to feeling that way again, then you can start practicing, okay, I can separate the emotion from the event. The event's nice, it's helpful. I mean, it's helpful to put in a comedy or some stand-up comedy and then laugh, right? Put in a comedy, then you feel joy, you feel lighthearted, you have fun. But it takes practice to be like, I can really just do this right now. I can be driving, I can be stuck in traffic and look around me and be so wildly, outrageously grateful for all kinds of things. I could be grateful for the car that I have. I could be grateful that I have heat in the car that I have. I could be grateful for, that it's windy and kind of, beautiful, even though it's March, beautiful fall weather. Out here, we're having a really mild March. You could be grateful that podcasts. I really enjoy listening to podcasts on my way to and from work. And just start making a list of things. So doing these kinds of things can really help to like ease up those emotions. And again, it takes time and it takes practice. And so much of the hatred and anger, it's normal, and it's a stage in healing, and it's there. It's also designed to bring a message with it. All of our emotions are working towards our highest and greatest good. Frankly, especially the problematic emotion, or what emotion, not problematic, but uncomfortable. These uncomfortable emotions are also working towards our highest and greatest good. And, oh, you know what? I think the internet just died. Oh no! Yes, nope, we're back. Okay. It's really windy here tonight, so I hope it's not going to be an issue all night long. But yes, okay. So our emotions have messages for us, and our unpleasant emotions really have messages for us. So when we're experiencing emotions of like hate or anger, those are emotions with the messages of, this is not for you. Mala, this is not for you. This causes you pain. This is not your highest and greatest good. This is your pain. The message here is, stay away from anybody. Stay away from this person. Stay away from anybody that's even remotely like this person. So if we can also, so I'm telling you kind of two different things here, because there's two different strategies I think that can help, that I've done in my own life, and I think other people have too. So I was saying before, practice picking up and putting down these different emotions and realizing that you are in charge here. You are not your emotions. You're the consciousness behind your emotions. When you can learn to bring awareness to your emotions, easier said than done. Like, even knowing all of this stuff, it's still a challenge, especially with these really intense emotions, because it's easy to get caught up in them. But so picking them up, putting them down, realizing that you are in charge here. You are the consciousness behind these emotions. The other thing that you can also practice doing is embracing these intense emotions, realizing that they are working towards your highest and greatest good. And this hurts so bad because it's not for you. So I think if we can kind of realize our emotions are on our side, even though they're incredibly painful, that can also bring a lot of peace. And this might sound really hippie woo-woo, but talking to your emotions and acknowledging, okay, hate, I feel you, I see you, I acknowledge you. I know that you're here to bring me a message. I'm trying so hard to squeeze out every possible lesson, every possible message. I'm trying to make this work for my highest and greatest good. And I know that you're here because you have something that you want to show me. And so I'm going to practice picking you up and putting you down, but I will promise you this. I'm going to learn all of the lessons and all of the messages that you want me to learn. And sometimes I think just acknowledging that really does help. So I hope that helps. Okay. Okay, let's see. Jennifer says, is there a positive way to get revenge on a narcissist? Thank you for your page. The best positive way to truly get revenge on a narcissist is to go live an amazing life. And I know that that's probably not what you want to hear, but it's the truth on a couple different levels. So the first level being, it's a waste of energy, like feeding into that negative energy. It doesn't settle the score. It brings you down to their level. And it's only hurting you. The second part of this is when we decide to go out and live a good life. You know, narcissists, they're very vulnerable, they're very insecure. Like all of this, you know, bravado and grandiosity and abuse of other people. It's because they have all of these issues within them. And, you know, healthy, happy, balanced people don't have to go around destroying other people in order to feel good about themselves. They're like adult bullies. And so if you realize that, like this is what you're dealing with, like you're dealing with a person with really dysfunctional, problematic behavior. Thank goodness that you're not them, right? So taking time to just be like, I got tangled up in somebody else's dysfunction, like big time. They hid it pretty well. I made a lot of, justifications for it. You were manipulated. Do you know what I mean? So it's like you didn't know. You didn't know. And a person gets caught up in a spider web. And so realizing, okay, this is what happened. This is not me. This is 100% them. Like their abusive behavior and their manipulation, all them, that's on them, So the best way to do it, to really get under their skin, is to seriously go live the kind of life that they will never ever live. Everything about them is for show. They go from person to person, like using, abusing, and exploiting people. There is no sincere attachment there to anybody or anything. So if you can live a life, an amazing life that you love, then you've won. You've won on so many different levels. So I know so many people want to know, how how can you, and I get it. I so get it, where you're just like, I want to be justified. I want to be heard. I want revenge. I want karma. I want them to suffer like how I've suffered. And the only ways to do that is to transmute that energy, to take that negativity, that anger, and that rage, because that will destroy you. It'll destroy you. And we need you. Like we need you on the good side of things. So taking that negativity, all of the energy, here's the beauty of anger and rage and wanting revenge. It's power. It's powerful stuff. So if you can take all of that power and channel it into something good, getting into amazing shape, writing a book, learning to really love yourself, living your life full out, that's when amazing things happen. So don't waste this power on this energy on more negativity, because then it just gets you stuck in this loop of drama and dysfunction, and it's like getting stuck in quicksand. It's not worth it. Awesome Christina says, how do I get myself out of isolation after narcissistic abuse? I'm so shut down in front of others. Thank you so much for everything that you do. Okay, great question. I think realizing too that people experience this narcissistic abuse in a wide variety of ways, and they have a wide variety of emotions that go along with it. So if a person experiences something traumatic like this, it's very common for them to want to isolate. It's kind of an animal thing in general, people being no exception, right? So if animals don't feel good, they often, a cat or a dog, they're going to go hide behind a bush. They're going to go crawl under the deck. Like they just want to be left alone. And humans are very much the same way. I too, like I'm human too, right? So like I'm not saying anything. Yeah. So, we feel the same way. So it's sort of like, okay, people often feel numb, or they feel incredible amounts of rage, or they might feel some relief, or they might feel incredible sadness, or they might feel anxiety, or they might feel all of these emotions kind of throughout the day. It's very common. These things, they often do pass with time. It's just kind of like the different stages of grief, where, it's all of these different stages, like, what is it, like bargaining and acceptance and denial. And I'm not saying these in order here. Anger, there's a few more, but it's very common, people, you'll go through these wide range of emotions several times, multiple times before you kind of come out on the other side of these things. So in part, it's being good to yourself and realizing it's okay. You don't feel like going out. You don't want to be around other people. Maybe you're having trouble trusting other people right now. Totally normal for what you went through. And if you want to kind of hunker down in your house, I think what helps with this, so it doesn't become a rut that you're stuck in, is to give yourself a time frame. So to be like, you know what, I'm feeling really depressed, or I'm feeling like I just don't want to be around people. Okay, I'm going to do this for this weekend. But come Sunday at 7 p.m., I'm going to get up and I'm going to go grocery shopping. And you allow yourself, okay, I can feel incredibly depressed. I don't want to brush my teeth. I don't want to shower. I don't want to go to work. Okay, I'm not going to run from this. I'm going to stay here because this is how I'm feeling right now. But I'm going to give myself a time limit, because I think if a person doesn't give themselves a time limit, this can very easily become, 3 years later kind of a thing. So it helps to put this like stop, kind of like a stop loss on how long, how far you're going to let this continue. And as far as being shut down in front of others, this also takes time. So if you have friends, or if you're looking to make new friends, if you're looking to make new friends, I'm a huge fan of meetup.com. I think this is a great way to get out and do new things. Here's the beauty of sites like meetup.com is you're going out with all new people and doing all new experiences. And it kind of helps to reset your brain, because it's just something that's totally different. The benefit to that is you're with people who generally you don't know. And so when you're with people that you don't know, I think it can be easier to be in the moment, because you're not going to be talking about your previous relationship with them. You're going to just be in the moment. And that can help to kind of get back out into life a little bit. And realizing too, you can always leave. This is all about you. You have the power, you have the control. And again, kind of practicing with that. So you can play around and say, okay, here's how it feels like to be really shut down in front of others. And so for the next 5 minutes, I'm going to be really invested in other people, and I'm going to ask them questions, and I'm going to smile and just try to stay playful about it. Like, this is all very just experimental. Don't put a lot of pressure on yourself. Like, just try to have fun with this. And then see how that feels. And so maybe then you decide, okay, this is kind of fun, playing cards or, what have you. Okay, I'm going to stay here for another 5 minutes. And then if I decide, I can go back into being more reserved. Here's another thing real quick too, is self-talk during all of this. So paying attention to the words that you use to describe what you're going through and how you're feeling. So for example, you use the words, I am so shut down in front of others. While that might be true, you could also play around with what are some more empowering ways to describe that. So maybe saying something to yourself like, I'm feeling very reserved in front of others. I am feeling very quiet in front of others. And seeing how does that feel? Like, probably feeling shut down feels more accurate, but that can also feel a lot more permanent than saying something like, I'm feeling really quiet tonight, which feels more temporary. So there's so much power in the words that we speak, and in the words that how we describe how we're feeling and how we describe what we're going through to ourselves. So that's something else to kind of play around with. There's a lot of power there. Okay. Let me get some more tea real quick here. Mala says, the financial abuse, I am still struggling, Dana. How do I get out of it? I still can't accept what he's done to me. I was in such a good job and he moved me across the country to get me and got me pregnant. I hate him. I think in part realizing that this is all part of the story of your life. And if you can get away, I don't know if you're still with this man or if you're away from him or kind of what the dynamic is, but to see, okay, can you go, is there some sort of like consulate there that you could possibly get help? Is there like a domestic violence shelter? What can you call friends and family to see if they can give you the funds to go back home? Doing what you need to do in order to kind of get your support system in place and to get away from that, if that's what you feel that you need to do. So and then turning this pain into your power as much as you possibly can. One of the things that helped me the most was, and this was such an aha moment for me, my grandmother wrote a book about her experiences with my grandfather and all of the abuse, all of the awfulness that she went through with him. And my mom gave me that. It was never published, but it's I still have it sitting right over there. It's in a binder, and it was her story. And for some reason, it was like something clicked, and I realized this is just the story of my life, and realizing how much she went through, and oh my gosh, the strength that it must have taken to overcome this, to leave this man who was a minister, who had all of these people fooled. He was so charming and handsome and likable and funny and the whole nine, and everybody thought she was the bad wife. If she just would have cooked more, cleaned more, or been had sex with him more, done all if she would have just been a totally different person, then maybe he would have been faithful. Maybe he would have treated her with dignity and respect. Maybe he wouldn't have done like all of the awful things that he did. But none of that was true because it had nothing to do with her. His behavior was a reflection of him. And they got divorced in, I think it was the 60s or 70s. She had no credit. She had no job. She'd been a stay-at-home mom. This was back in a time, here in the United States, where if a woman wasn't married, she couldn't buy a house. She couldn't buy a car. Like, you couldn't get a loan. There was no credit unless you were married. And starting over, both of her children were grown and out of the house. Starting over and having to convince people to try to get a house, to try to get a job. And her struggle, I was so impressed and I was so proud of her for doing all of that. And I can't even fathom. And I don't even, and this was way back when, I don't even know if she realized that any of what she went through was abuse. She just knew that her ex-husband was an absolute holy terror and was a total jerk. And so with that, there will be a day where your children or your grandchildren hear your story and everything that you went through. And if you can use this towards your highest and greatest good and be like, yes, I went through all of this, and like Maya Angelou would say, and yet still I rise. And still I rise. And they can see that strength and they can say, boy, you know what Grandmama Mala went through? Like, she's my hero. She came through that. And the more struggle, the more triumph there is. And it's not right, and it's not fair that you're here and that you have to go through this. It's not. But you can get through this, and you can make it work for your highest and greatest good. And you can make it work for the highest and greatest good of your family and for other people. And you can overcome. You can. So hugs to you. Let's see. Oh, that's a good question. Sin says, how would you suggest going no contact when you are very compassionate and you still care so much? I like this question. Okay. So with compassion and with caring, our compassion and our level of caring, it's incomplete if it does not include ourselves. So having compassion about somebody else, caring about somebody else to the point where it's hurting you, that's not compassion, that's not caring, that's more on the side of codependency. So some things that very out of line there. And you can use whatever word you want to. I know that's a very emotionally charged word for a lot of people. There is no value in sinking yourself in order to help save somebody else. Like things are very out of alignment. So you can still have compassion. You can still care about a person, where to kind of get back in alignment with that, to where this becomes healthy, is where you're having compassion and care for them, but from a place where you're not endangering yourself. So it's not having compassion if we're continually bailing them out, if we're continually going back with the intention of trying to fix them or save them. That's not compassion. I know it feels like compassion. I know it feels like caring, but it's not. That's enabling behavior. It's unhealthy behavior. It's more on that side of that one-sided kind of behavior where we give and we give and we give, and they take and they take and they take, and we mistake over giving for this is somehow healthy, and that maybe if we just continue to give and give and give, that our love will somehow change them, and that's very dysfunctional thinking. This took me, I'm almost 40, like it took me like 39 years to realize this. And I would get really defensive when people would told me I was doing things wrong. I was like, well, what do you, how can loving a person be wrong? How can being compassionate be wrong? How can giving second or 22nd or 222nd chances be wrong? Isn't that what we're all doing? Isn't this right? Like forgive and forget, right? And nobody's perfect. And, our love can fix them, and we just need to be more patient and more understanding and more tolerant and all of these things. And these are all really good characteristics. And I, probably like a lot of people, this was my identity. This was my personality, the core of who I was from a very young age. So, I became a teacher, and then later on in life, I became a nurse. And so it was, my whole world has been all about caring for others. That's all I ever knew. And I never realized that the key piece with making that healthy was like healthy boundaries, was not with valuing yourself enough to where you're not putting yourself in a situation to where you're sinking yourself to save somebody else in order to kind of keep the relationship afloat. That was the piece that I think so many of us are missing. It was like, oh, because I thought we were all just doing this, right? Like this is what we're supposed to be doing, and true love can survive anything, and it's all about for better or for worse. And we hear all these cliches and all of these twisted messages that they're not healthy. It's a really, the you complete me, and on and on and on. It's just, it's toxic messages. It's not healthy. So you can still send this person light and love, but it's got to be from a place where you can stay safe and sane. You can't fix them. We can't fix them. They've got to do it on their own. It's all part of it. And frankly, even if we could, that would still be problematic, because then we would be enabling them. We would be cheating them out of the journey of self-discovery and healing themselves. Nobody can do this for another person. We can't carry other people across the finish line. Like this is them. This is their journey. And but I get it. Like I get it. You're just so not alone in that. If you haven't already checked out my video series on this, it's called Red Flags of Codependency. And I use the word codependency just because it's one of the more common words that people tend to look for. But you could also substitute that word with empath or even like excessive amounts of empathy, which is kind of empaths, kind of what we are too. So that might help. So I think just realizing that boundaries are where it's at. Once you start practicing boundaries, then you understand that going no contact isn't a punishment. It has very little to do with them. It has everything to do with you. It has to do with you knowing what takes energy from you, what gives energy to you, what's toxic for you, and what's nourishing for you. It's very simple. What's toxic for you, you distance yourself. So going no contact, going low contact, if it's, the situation calls for it, whatever it might be, it's not to punish somebody else. It's in order to keep yourself safe. It's a natural and healthy reaction to people or situations or what have you that drain your energy. And of course, they're not going to like it, and they're going to want to argue with you, and they're going to say all kinds of things about that. But that's okay. They don't have to understand. This is about you drawing a boundary, and you don't need to justify or argue or defend or explain it. Like, it's just no means no. Like, this is all I have to give, or this is all I was able to give, and now I'm done. And I wish you light and love, but from over here. Like from behind this closed door kind of a thing. I hope that helps. Okay, let me scroll down. Let's see. Okay, Sin says, is there a healthy time frame for no contact? It feels as if I'm running away instead of moving forward towards something better. I'm not quite sure what you mean by this question, so I'm just going to answer it in the way that I am understanding it, which may be very off base. But as far as a healthy time frame for no contact, so by that, if you mean how long should you or could you stay no contact, it's okay to stay no contact forever with a problematic person. It's just kind of all depends on you and kind of what you want to do with that. The people in my life that I've gone no contact with, I have fully gone no contact with. Like I am totally okay with never talking to them again. Because, and again, it's not to punish them. It's, I don't want chaos and struggle and strife and drama and dysfunction in my life. That's a project. Like I'm not looking for people that are projects. Like I'm looking for people that are enjoyable to be around. And I'm not saying that they have to be perfect, but at least understand the fundamentals of like treating me with dignity and respect and having open, honest, sincere, solutions-oriented communication. Like that's kind of the basics. Like those are my just kind of, just basic expectations. It's really not asking too much at all. Like there's a lot of people out there that are able to do that. So that's kind of the foundation. If somebody can't even give me that, then I'm not going to spend time with them because it's not going to be a relationship of like mutuality. It would be, it's not healthy. It would be me enabling them I don't know. It just wouldn't be healthy. So I don't know if there's a time frame, if that's what you were intending by your question. It feels like you're running away. So, okay, so the second part of your question, if I understand it, how you meant it, the running away instead of moving forward towards something better. So a lot of people struggle with this. They're like, okay, Dana, I got this person out of my life and boy, I'm so relieved by that. But now I feel this big void. I kind of miss the good times and I'm tempted to go back and like, I just don't, I don't know what to do. And whenever we subtract anything out of our life, whatever it might be, if a person quits smoking, right, or quits eating certain food or quits doing anything, it creates a void in a person's life. And so what tends to happen, right? So like if we quit smoking, we tend to walk around thinking like, I quit smoking, I want a cigarette. We're so focused on the emptiness there that it's hard to kind of navigate around that because then you have to relearn all of these behaviors. There was a great commercial that came out a handful of years ago that summed this up perfectly. I think it was that Truth campaign about not smoking. And it was these people that were going about their day and like they had, coffee and they would like dump it on themselves, or they would drive and not not know how to turn the radio on or not know how to turn their blinkers on. They were just a mess. Like they were trying to put makeup on and they just didn't know how to go about their day. And the whole concept of the commercial was, when you quit smoking, you have to relearn all of these behaviors, which is so true because you have that kind of that stimulus response thing. Like you have when you're a smoker, if you have coffee and a cigarette, you have a beer and a cigarette, you get on the phone with a friend, you have a phone call and a cigarette, you have, after lunch and a cigarette. And when you quit doing that, it really helps you have to relearn how to live life without stimulus response. It takes time. It's the same thing in a relationship. If that person's not there, because that routine it brings comfort. And as human beings, a large part of how we're wired is we're wired for consistency. We're wired for what's comfortable. Change is always scary, even if it's for the best. So knowing that, we can work towards anticipating this and realize, okay, there's this void in my life. I've gone no contact, but now there's this emptiness there. So filling this up with something positive. So if you and this other person, you guys used to go out and watch, I don't know, you used to go line dancing on Friday nights and you used to go out for dinner on Wednesday nights. To anticipate, okay, those are probably going to be some like stimulus response. Like Wednesday night comes up, you're probably going to feel those twinges of nostalgia. So what can you do instead to where you're lessening that feeling, you're filling in that void with something positive. And then it won't feel so much like you're running away from something else because you're not. You're like moving towards embracing something positive, but it really helps to find the something positive that you can move towards, that you can actually embrace. Okay, let's see. Okay, Helene says, why would a narcissist comment and flirt with other women on Facebook after we broke up, and he never did for me the 3 years we dated? I was healing a lot, but it hurts. Well, it sounds like he's trying to line up supply. So it's, if his goal is to get a bunch of other women, and if it's easiest for him to get a bunch of other women on Facebook, or to get that attention on Facebook, then that's probably what's driving him to do this. But again, realize his behavior, even though it's incredibly hurtful, it doesn't have anything to do with you. This guy is a womanizer and he goes from woman to woman to woman. There is no monogamy there. It's just kind of whatever he wants in the moment. And his actions speak to his character. They don't speak to some sort of deficit within you. I know that can be really hard because it's so easy to see these actions and be like, well, I know this is kind of twisted thinking on my end, but it's still hurtful. Like, he never flirted, he never did this with me, but now he's doing this with somebody else. And the reality is because he's doing that because he feels that that's what it's going to take in order for his moves to actually work on the new person. But it's not that you weren't worthy of these things. It's not that you weren't good enough. It's nothing about that. They change. They're like pickup artists. Like they change their game based on the surroundings, based on the situation, based on their target. Everybody's love bombing phase, if a person even goes through that, everybody's phase is different. It's all about mirroring what does this person need or want, and then giving that to them. Saffron says, Dana, have you ever had a weird session with a therapist before? My therapist was annoyed at me and seemed unprofessional during our last session. I ended up feeling worse than I did before the session. Oh, you betcha. Like, I've had a handful of really weird sessions. Some of them have been really weird, and some of them I just have been nice, but not helpful at all. And this isn't to say, of course, that all therapists are weird or like unhelpful. It's like finding a professional in any field. And oftentimes I think it takes going to a few to see if there's really that rapport there and if you're feeling validated and understood and comfortable. And abuse of any kind this stuff is not really taught. This is what I've really come to realize. It's not really taught, and I think what is taught is more like physical abuse, which is really unfortunate because physical abuse is the vast majority of the time preceded by emotional, verbal, psychological abuse. Like, physical abuse is a late stage of abuse in an abusive relationship. But I don't know. So there's a lot of mental health people in general that I think really aren't up to speed with this as much as we assume that they are, or that we would like for them to be. Support groups, I think, are really helpful oftentimes with this kind of stuff because it is very validating. You can get a lot of validation and a lot of clarity from people in the support group because they've been there, they've done that. So if you're looking around for different therapists, if you're not feeling comfortable with the therapist, you don't need to keep going. I think here's kind of my problem with, or my concern, I should say, with the way therapy is currently done is, especially with people that have gone through abuse. When people have gone through abuse, they're confused and they don't know if it's them or if it's their partner or what's going on. They don't trust their judgment. They don't trust reality. They really struggle with they've been manipulated for so long. It's sort of like coming out of a cult. And a person's like, I don't even know what happened. And I'm here and all I know is that's these other people in this group. I thought we were all friends. I didn't realize we were in a cult. But now I feel like, how did I not realize we were in a cult? Because we all shaved our heads and wore robes and we're eating the same things. But oh my goodness, like the things that we were a part of, I can't even believe I'd be a part of that. And then the fog of that manipulation is lifting, and then they're horrified. Very similar to when a person comes out of an abusive relationship and that fog lifts and they're like, it's so, hindsight's always 20/20. But when a person's first coming out of that fog, the challenge with therapy, the way it's done, is it's done in isolation. So it's done on one-on-one. And so if a person's like, I'm assuming that you know what you're doing because you're a therapist, and all I know is I really don't know what to do. I'm scared. I've been manipulated for a long time. I don't know which end is up. I don't know who to trust. I don't know what's going on. What's concerning to me is when you get one-on-one with a person who may or may not have any familiarity at all with abuse, and it's really easy for them to give a lot of well-intended bad advice because they're just not familiar with the dynamics of abuse. And of course, to the person that's their client, they don't realize that they can't tell the difference really from bad advice from good advice because they don't know, because they've been manipulated for a long time. So because of this, I encourage people, if you're looking for a therapist, call up a few of them, try to talk to them specifically, and ask them a few questions. Ask them if they're familiar with emotional abuse or psychological abuse. Ask them to, kind of what their thoughts are about this. See if they seem to know what they're talking about. Because it's one thing to be like, oh yeah, yeah, I know about emotional abuse. And it's like, well, do you really? Or have you just kind of heard the word and you sat in on some, in services? Like, are you really familiar with the manipulation that a person goes through? And unfortunately, it's the challenge. So asking them some questions about it, seeing how you feel over the phone with them, meeting with them in person, seeing if that works. I encourage people to join support groups as well. And this way you can kind of, if something strange does happen in individual therapy, you can say, hey, this is what I experienced. And then other people in the group can be like, whoa, that was really inappropriate, or that was really far out there. Or, I would keep looking if I were you. So kind of the benefit, here's my favorite approach, because I'm not trying to dog on therapy. I just think these are some very real challenges, barriers to potentially getting help. My ideal situation that I think works best is if a person seeks that validation and clarification in the group, because you're going to be hearing from a bunch of people that have been there, done that. Getting that validation and clarity there, and then taking that and being like, oh, you know what, therapist person, this is what I discovered. I discovered this piece and this piece and this piece, and kind of what do you think about this? Or can we discuss this? And so then because it's so, in all fairness to them too, when you're dealing with a traumatized person, or you're trying to work with a traumatized person, it can be like trying to navigate your way through a minefield. So they don't know what's going to trigger you. They don't know. It can just be a really difficult situation to navigate for anybody. So I think if you can kind of set the situation up to work for your highest and greatest good by going about it that way, you might have more of the results that you're looking for. But really, it's a lot of it's trial and error, and with all of it, and just seeing kind of what's working for you, what's not working for you, and then adjusting as you go. Okay, Sin, here's another great question. Sin asks, do you have any specific videos to decide for certain that he's a narcissist so I won't feel so doubtful? I do. I don't know if you guys listen to podcasts, but let me go and look. I recently just launched a podcast, and it's called Thrive After Abuse. You can find me on iTunes. And I just put out an episode that's very, very similar. Episode 14. It's called What If They Aren't a Narcissist? What If I'm Wrong? And it goes through exactly that. So kind of in a nutshell, I talk about the label. The word narcissist it's a pointer to behaviors. Labels come and go. The label itself doesn't matter. I see so many people, I get it because I was there too, that really get hung up on the label. They want to know for certain. I need to know if this person's a narcissist, because in their mind, they're thinking, if they are a narcissist, then that means it's a deal breaker. But if they aren't a narcissist, this means it's somehow workable behavior. But the reality is it's not so cut and dry. It's not so black and white. Everything's on a spectrum to begin with. And narcissism is no different. So what's important is the behaviors. If there's abuse of any kind, if a person's very draining, if you're feeling continually ground down or treated with a lack of dignity and respect, in my book, any of that stuff is deal breaker stuff. Anytime that you're having to try to teach an adult the basics of adult behavior, here's how to be loyal, here's how to not flirt, here's why you don't cheat, like here's why you don't lie, here's why you don't steal, like these kinds of things, here's how to be nice to other people, here's how, saying things like this hurts people's feelings. Like if you're having to explain these things to an adult, there's a problem and you don't have enough time to try to get them caught up to speed. Like that stuff's not workable. That's the difference between like a partner and a project. And it's a really good idea to not date a person that's a project and then try to get them to change. Because most people, us included, tend to not necessarily change all that much. And as you go through this healing process and you start moving towards getting more in alignment with yourself and developing healthy boundaries and healthy standards and doing all of this, you will learn like, wow, this really is an ongoing process that I need to take time for like reflection and introspection on like a daily basis. And you'll have these moments where you're like, oh my gosh, the old me would have handled it this way. The new me is handling it this way. And how exciting is it going to be for like future me is going to handle it probably totally in like a much better way. So like change takes time and it's a process and it involves a lot of work. If a person's not, and most people tend to only be motivated to actually change if they've experienced enough pain. And that's the challenge with narcissists, or let's just say with narcissistic people in general, is if they're not experiencing pain from their actions, if they feel entitled and justified to do or say whatever they want to do or say, then there's no motivation to change because it's not a problem to them. So they're always staying at that state of change where they're at that pre-contemplative stage where they're like, I don't have a problem. You're the one with the problem. I don't have a problem. Sort of like an alcoholic or an addict. If it's not registering to them that this is a problem, they're going to have to experience pain until they realize it's a problem. They have to hit rock bottom. And so like a lot of, AA or NA groups will talk about that. Like if you really love them, you will let them experience pain. And so for those of us that are on the opposite side of this, we're like, oh my gosh, no. If we really love them, we want to protect them from getting hurt. We want to try to cushion their fall. We just want them to just stop drinking or stop using drugs. We just don't want them to suffer any pain because we love them so much. But the reality is it has to come from within. And so it's like the alcoholic. An alcoholic might have to have 7 DUIs or lose their license before they actually get motivated to do the work necessary. And it's the same thing too when people talk about, every now and again I see different programs that pop up about curing narcissism. And I think the problem with that is the more important conversation, I think, in all of this is to not give people false hope. Because there can be, let's say there are programs out there. Let's just say that there are programs out there that totally work to cure narcissism. It's only going to work if that narcissistic person wants to do the work. Just like rehab only works if the addict or the alcoholic is ready to actually get sober. So even if there is treatment out there, they've got to be actually willing to do the day in, day out work of radically changing their life. So it's not so black and white as to whether or not they are a narcissist or they're just a normal person with a bunch of bad behavior. The underlying theme there is a bunch of bad behavior. And once you start doing the work of getting in alignment with yourself and realizing that you matter and that you are worth being treated with dignity and respect, then it's a lot easier to realize it doesn't matter what you call problematic behavior. If it's a problem for me, it's a problem for me. And it's okay for me to distance myself from this. This is not healthy for me. Mala asks, why do they go around destroying other human beings this way? It's because it makes them feel smug and superior. Just sort of like how other people might get their self-esteem needs met by, learning how to cook, or learning a new language, or reading a book, or going to the gym, or dressing a certain way, or kind of what have you. Narcissistic people have such this like paper thin ego. And because and part of that is, this is kind of the theory behind it, is that they never learned how to attach to people, probably early in childhood, in a healthy way. And so they've built up this defense mechanism to be like, I'm not going to get hurt. And of course, this is all a subconscious thing. So they turn that side of them off that's made them vulnerable. So let's say, for example, because it's very common for like trauma and narcissism or sociopathy or psychopathy to go hand in hand. So let's say, for example, and it doesn't have to even be like really major trauma. It's kind of a combination of factors at play and determining kind of how a person ends up. So let's say, for example, if a child is abused, right? Let's say they're verbally abused, they're emotionally abused. Let's even say that they're sexually abused, okay? And they decide that, because especially if it's by a family member or by a parent, that love, that affection, that love is scary and it's painful, and it causes them nothing but hurt and heartache. And so in an attempt, like a psychological attempt, in order to keep themselves safe, they just turn that part of themselves off and they just kind of detach. And so there is no more sincere connection there. So there's these more kind of base level emotions of like envy, lust, greed, more like base drivers for them, which how we see this is like, it's a lot of like cheating and lying and stealing and impulsivity. That's them. It's their inability to actually attach effectively to other people and bond effectively and develop and take that lust and turn it into like deep levels of love. And to take that, they're not able to be happy for other people. They're stuck in like that envy stage. And so if a person has like a healthy self-esteem, they can see, like I could see something that's going good for you. And let's say if I see that you have a brand new car, right? And let's say my car is in the shop. There might be twinges of envy or twinges of jealousy there. Like, oh man, I really wish I had that car that Mala has. That's gorgeous. Or how nice that her heater works, right? In her car. But if we're feeling that, but it'll generally, if you're a friend or what have you, or a family member, generally it's that feeling of envy doesn't last for a brief kind of twinge, which I think is normal, but then it goes into, wow, good for her. Because that healthy self-esteem realizes it's an attitude of abundance. There's enough out there. Good things can happen to you and good things can happen to me. And if good things happen to you, it's not a threat to me. We don't have to live in this attitude of scarcity that there's only so much good stuff to go around. But with narcissists, it's this very kind of immature mentality where it is that attitude of scarcity. So it's this feeling of the only way that I know how to feel important is to tear everybody else down. And that's kind of like that mindset where it's, instead of a healthier mindset, which would be like, okay, I really, get my self-esteem needs met by building people up. Because we all have the same basic needs. It's how we go about getting them met is where it becomes like healthy or problematic. So it's deep. People with like deeply dysfunctional things. This is why people are like, okay, maybe they could be fixed or maybe they could help. It's not as simple as them like just stopping cheating or stopping yelling. Like there's a reason that there's always a deeper reason why anybody does anything. It's sort of like telling a person, well, you just need to lose 100 pounds. Okay. Like there's a reason that person's carrying that weight. Assuming it's not medical, like thyroid or something like that. There's generally a reason. There's a reason. Whether or not we're aware of it is another story. Generally, we're not. But everything that we do as human beings is designed to meet some sort of need. And when we see behavior like that, then we can kind of realize, okay, this isn't as simple as like them just treating us with dignity and respect, or them just not yelling or cussing at us. Like this is some deep-seated stuff that's, way beyond anything that's going to get permanently fixed anytime soon. Like it's going to require a lot of energy and effort on their end. Okay, let me get some more tea here. Okay, so Sophie asks, I left my narcissistic ex about 3 years ago. We have children together, so I have to communicate with him. How can I protect myself from getting sucked in when we speak? I think a way that you might want to experiment with would be to make a list, or you can just video yourself talking to yourself, a list of like why he's your ex, right? So like these are the things that he lied about. These are the things that he did to you, to the neighbors, to your child, to whatever. Like, and you list out your reasons. And so if you're feeling those pulls of like nostalgia, or if he's kind of, manipulating, like subtly manipulating these feelings of, guilt or obligation, or, he's using charm or hope or these kinds of things, you can go back and read your list, or you can go back and you can watch your video and be like, oh, right. Like, that's why. And it helps to keep a person on track, because it can be emotionally draining when you've got somebody that's it's hard when somebody's kind of actively manipulating you, or if they're not even maybe even actively manipulating you, but if they're just being on their good behavior, it can be really difficult. Because a lot of people are like, I don't want to leave. Like, I didn't want to get a divorce. Like, I just wanted the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde stuff to stop. I just wanted the Mr. Hyde to go away. And so when you're seeing that Dr. Jekyll side, those twinges of maybe this could work, maybe he is all better, it's normal for that kind of stuff to surface. But it's deep-seated stuff if a person's got two very different sides to themselves. Okay, so Mala's asking about, can you speak more about financial abuse and how to heal from that? Because everything feels like a mess now. I need some insight. I think it depends on what you're looking at as far as what's a mess. So if you're talking about a financial mess, and I don't know what country you live in, I don't know what the financial rules and regulations are there, but to kind of sit down, maybe with an attorney, some of them offer, and again, every country is going to be different, every state's going to be different, but if you can sit down with somebody and either an attorney or somebody, and say, okay, this is where I'm at. I don't know if I need to file for bankruptcy. I don't know, I need some sort of plan. Maybe debt consolidation would be an option. To just see okay, what needs to happen here. And I think you'll feel better once you get some sort of plan, and then you can kind of start working your plan. But and if you're not in a support group already, I would highly recommend it, because that stuff, it can be so stressful when it's coming at you at all in every angle like that, like emotionally and financially and verbally, and you're away from your support system and you just have a lot going on. So, okay, I have a few questions here from the website. So if you guys want to ask a question for me to read on the live stream here, you can email me at deardana@thriveafterabuse.com. So, okay, let's see. Okay, where to start here? Some of these are long. Okay, this is from Pat, who says, "Dear Dana, I really appreciate your hard work. Could you give some examples of how to respond to a loved one that likes to 'you should' me?" Okay, great question. I have a family member that is notorious for doing this as well. I think what's important to remember here is what do you have control over? And the answer is you. Like, we all only ever have control over ourselves. So knowing that you don't have control over this other person or how they act, then I think that can make things a little bit easier. So here's an example. You could decide to confront them directly and say something like, you know what, we'll just say our family member's name is Jennifer. You know, Jennifer, I know that you're coming from a place of love and concern, but whenever you tell me that I should do something, it really rattles my judgment in my decision making. Instead, maybe, could you instead say could? Could you replace should with could? And kind of give her an option. So that way she's not saying, well, you know what? You should be taking your kids to daycare, right? And you're like, I don't want to do that. To have her reframe that or rephrase that and say, you know what? Maybe you could be taking your children to daycare. Or you could take your children to soccer practice. Or, maybe you could cut your hair. Or you could grow your hair out. So when people, because the word should feels so full of judgment, right? This is what you should. This is what you should do and you shouldn't do, and that finger wagging, right? Versus could, which allows for possibility. Because should is very black or white. You should be doing this and you shouldn't be doing that. And that's why that word feels kind of icky. Could is like, well, you could. It's a fun exercise to just really get the word should out of your vocabulary. Talking with other people and then talking to yourself. And it's fun because it allows so much more possibility. Okay. Instead of saying, like, I should be up every morning at 5 a.m. Even if you're like, no, for real, like I really should be up at 5 a.m., right? Because I got to get up and I want to go to the gym and I want to go to work and I want to do all these things. If you replace that should with could, and you say, well, I could get up at 5 a.m. Okay, now it's open to possibility. So why am I not getting up at 5 a.m.? And so now it replaces that judgment with curiosity. And so now instead of feeling that weight of, oh, I should be up at 5 a.m., but I'm not, and I'm just lazy, or I'm a failure, or I'm not motivated, because that doesn't get anybody anywhere. But replacing it with could, and you're like, well, okay, yeah, I could get up at 5 a.m. I want to get up at 5 a.m., but I'm not getting up at 5 a.m., so what's really going on here? Then you can actually start to brainstorm when you can replace that judgment with curiosity and work towards building a solution. So that would be kind of one thing, is having the discussion with her about replacing the word should and could in kind of a non-threatening way. If you don't feel that she would be receptive to that, maybe after kind of doing this for yourself and realizing, I think a lot of people, it's just the default is should, Once you realize, okay, if it's coming from a place of love, but she's talking to me in terms of it's very like micromanaging and it's very annoying and it's smothering, but those aren't her intentions, in your own mind. I mean, you can always like interpret what she's saying or he's saying in whatever way you want to. So you can always just replace the word should with the word could. And they don't even need to change what they're doing. And you can make it into a game. You can decide, okay, every time they say should, I'm going to tell myself could, and I'm going to use this interaction as a reminder of how annoying the word should and how limiting the word should is. And so every time they say it, I'm just going to replace it with could, and I'm going to let this remind myself to continue to use the word could. So there's different ways that you can kind of play with this and trying to make it work more for you, but really trying to push, if you don't think she'd be open to changing how she's saying things to you, or if you tell her and she's not open, realizing, you can't, it's a whole, like, you can't lead a horse to water kind of a thing. So all you can do is all you can do. And then it's about accepting kind of the situation and the person for who they are. And then, and not saying that what they're doing is okay, but realizing this is where they are. They're not going to change. So knowing this, then I need to do something different. So what do I need to do different? Maybe I need to spend less time around them. Maybe I need to quit sharing certain stories or certain delicate topics in my life with them because I don't want to hear what I should or shouldn't be doing. And then kind of just trying to navigate that differently. And maybe that means, spending less time with them, or just, I don't know. It could mean any number of things for you. It's just kind of your line to navigate through this. So there's a lot of power that comes from kind of just accepting, releasing the need to try to fix other people and be like, okay, I'm not happy. And so in order for me to be happy, you need to change. Like, you need to stop saying should, and you need to respect my boundaries, and you need to do all of these things in order for me to feel good. So if you can separate the emotions from the events and just realize I can decide to be happy and still have a great life, and I don't need my environment to be perfect. Of course, it's a lot easier when our environment is full of like empowering and inspiring people. But if we're wanting to keep, some people with some problematic behavior in our lives, and again, everybody's got their own line with this. So if you're going to keep this person in your life, to release that responsibility, that weight of trying to get them to be exactly what you need in order for you to be happy. So, all right, let's see here. Okay, let me check these off as I go. Okay. Okay, this is from Anonymous, who says, my daughter is 27 and has weaponized her beautiful daughter against me. She has been gaslighting me for at least 12 years. The thing that made me identify with you is that my daughter always kicks off on important days like Christmas, Valentine's Day, or funerals. And you spotted this like you'd been watching us on TV. Do you have a specific forum or venue for children who are abusive? The forum I spotted you on tends to deal with romantic relationships, but family abuse is far worse because it's harder to walk out on your daughter. Any advice? I have cut off all communication with her. I've blocked her email, etc., but I haven't told her yet. Also, and while changing my granddaughter's nappy, I commented that her tiny little hands were cold, and my daughter told me to F off and go home. What causes her temporary insanity? A logical explanation will reward me with some restful sleep. Thanks so much. I love your show. It's a godsend. Well, thank you, and I'm glad that you enjoy the show. So, a couple things here. If you Google groups, you can Google searches for parents of abusive children or parents of narcissistic children. There are some groups out there, and you're right. It is, I think it's especially difficult when you have an abusive child and the parent is the one cutting off ties. I know a lot of people that have abusive parents and they have a lot of guilt for cutting ties, but it's a totally different level when it's the parent that's walking away from the child. And there's a lot of kind of this social pressure and guilt and, kind of scorn to actually walk away from a child who's being abusive. So you're right in the fact that it is it can be very much a different animal. But yes, Googling groups having to do with abusive children or parents of narcissistic children will help. Hopefully kind of give you an avenue that's more supportive of your specific situation. As far as her behavior, what you're describing as temporary insanity. So when any of us react to a situation in a disproportionate way, it's generally because we've been triggered. And so what's the challenge with triggers is that nobody else, it's like walking through a minefield. Nobody else knows where these bombs are. Half the time we don't even know, because triggers are such a subconscious thing. And when we're going through it, it can feel so real. So, and of course, I think too, when you're dealing with family dynamics, like parent-child kind of stuff, there's so much history there. And there can be so much, so much there that a person's triggered. And I think with children, especially as an adult, if we're raising this child, we have our perception of their childhood. The thing is, though, they might perceive things in a totally different way because for their whole childhood, they're perceiving things through the eyes of a child, which is to say, not a reasonable, rational human being, because they lack perspective. So if something happens where an adult maybe has to work really late, or the adult can't afford to put them into gymnastics or what have you, a child could perceive that as there's something wrong with them, or that they're not good enough, or all like a wide range of things. Kids, people in general, but especially children, can link up all kinds of incorrect cause and effect. And so, my guess with that, with you making the comment that your granddaughter's hands were cold, and she just lashed out and was like, F you, go home. It sounds like she was taking that as you being critical of her parenting, or, like basically saying, why doesn't your daughter have gloves on? That would be my guess. So, I don't, and it's so tough when if you can't easily or even possibly have that open, honest, sincere, solutions-oriented communication with the person. Because a lot of this stuff, it's so deep-seated and there's so much anger and there's so much pain there. And if a person's not even aware, if they're not even linking up why they're mad, if they have it worked up in their mind that they just feel the way that they feel because this person is just, always, if in her mind she's like, you're just always critical of me, like nothing, I'm tired of it. But if a person has that mindset of this person's critical, then that person can never do anything right, because they've already got it in their mind that they're always criticizing them, or that they're never going to do anything right. So it's incredibly difficult. And maybe getting into a support group with some other people that are going through it can help. There's also another fantastic book if you are open to reading a book about this. And I'm not saying that, I'm just saying that it can be a really I think it's a really great read for anybody, regardless of their situation. But it's called, it's CPTSD. Yes, CPTSD, From Surviving to Thriving by Pete Walker. And it's absolutely fascinating. So I would highly recommend that. I think it's a great book. It helps us to better understand ourselves, and it helps us to better understand people with problematic behavior that are in our life. And it it's just very insightful. It's very well read. It's a really interesting book. So maybe kind of check that out and go from there. All right, so this is from Sally, who says, I am 24 and I had a relationship with a narcissistic boyfriend who is 37. It was my first relationship. I broke up with him 1 month ago. He didn't listen to me while I was saying, I'm going. Thank you for everything during our love bombing month. He just turned back and went away. Also, during our 4 months, except for 2 months, I was really abused and I couldn't resist his behaviors. After we broke up, I went to a therapist, and the therapist also said about my ex that he's probably a narcissist and a borderline. Although I have watched your videos about silent treatment and hoovering, I have a question. Is our separation a kind of silent treatment according to his view? He didn't hoover me, and I also admit I'm waiting for hoovering because during our relationship he also stalked his ex-fiancée. The reason he said it is not emotional, he lent her some money, but she didn't give it back. And so because of this, he sent her a message on Instagram, but I haven't seen the messages. Let's see. And he's had other one-night stands. I wonder if I am not as valuable as much as these other girls because he didn't contact me. I know this sounds so crazy, but this is how I'm feeling. And let's see. Okay, I just really want to know if he's going to hoover me. So, none of us have a crystal ball. I don't know if he will or if he won't, but I would emotionally prepare yourself for it because this is kind of what they tend to do. So, and the reason they tend to do this is because they look at people. When a person can't attach in a sincere way to other people, then there are no sincere bonds there. And so what they do instead is they use people. They latch onto them. It's a parasitic type dynamic. So they're latching onto a person for like sex or for money or for a social status or public image or kind of any number of things, but it's not because they actually care about that person. So it's really important that you make that distinction and not confuse attention with him possibly being sorry, or intensity with sincerity, or love bombing with love. Like, these are all very different concepts, but they can feel like the same thing because it's similar. It's the same emotions that are being manipulated and exploited. So, because he might hoover, and so the reason they do tend to hoover is it's much easier if you already know, if a person knows, okay, I can go, these are the people in my pipeline. Like, I can use this person. This person's good for like public image or money or sex or social status. If they have their pipeline full of these different, or attention, right? If they have their pipeline full of these different people for these different reasons, then it's just easier to, recycle people in the pipeline and then maybe periodically go out and get new people. So that's how and why they tend to operate. It's kind of the path of least resistance for them. So that's why it's a good idea to have your emotional shields up for that. So if and when it does happen, you're not knocked off balance and thinking, maybe I should talk to him. Maybe I don't want to be rude, or I don't want to be mean, or maybe he's changed. Like, you're just realizing, okay, this is what this is, and I'm not going to open the door again. So, but let's get back to the point that you said. He's had a lot of, these one-night stand girls, and you wonder if you aren't that valuable as them. This makes me really sad, and I understand where you're coming from, and I it's not you. And I know it feels like you. Like, wow, okay, he's giving all of this attention to these other girls, and he's doing all these things to them. And so if he's doing all of this, then that must mean there's something really wrong with me. But the reality is there's not. There's something really wrong with him. So my hope for you, my hope for everybody out there is to get to the place where your self-esteem is not dependent upon another person or another person's actions. So this is a red flag. If you find yourself, and again, this is the kind of stuff we've been taught pretty much like the exact opposite in movies and media and fairy tales and all kinds of stuff. We've been taught this idea of, true love conquers all, that, our love, our self-esteem, our identity must be wrapped up in another person in order to be somehow complete, in order to be enough. We have to be in a relationship or be married to be enough, because now we're whole. Because before we were only half a person, but in a relationship we're whole. This is very codependent, toxic thinking. So realizing that you are enough as you are, that you don't need another person to be complete or to be whole. And it's not until you can get to that place where you're like, you know what, I really like myself. This is where, when you hear people talking about you need to be your own best friend, or like, not that you need to, that sounds kind of putting a lot of pressure on you, but like saying, it's important that we are our own best friend, right? What they're meaning by that is treating ourselves the way that we would treat a friend. Giving ourselves that love and that attention and that self-care, and, doing little things for ourselves and realizing that we matter and treating ourselves with dignity and respect and doing all of these things, instead of being like, whoa, I don't matter, right? Like I'm just gonna keep pushing myself really hard, and I'm gonna tell myself that I'm not worthy, or that I'm not good enough, or I'm gonna just be really hard on myself. And of course, so much of this stuff, we're not even aware of it because we're just so used to talking to ourselves like this, and that's really problematic. But if you can get to the place, and I would encourage you to watch the video series that I mentioned earlier about the red flags of codependency. I talk a lot about, especially in the video on love bombing, I talk a lot about, kind of how and why we tend to get sucked into this stuff, and how to get more in alignment with who we are, and separating the differences between, what's unhealthy and what's healthy, as far as how we're interacting with other people and how we're perceiving these relationships. Because really, a healthy relationship would be one where you're able to get all of your needs met by yourself. So like all of your physical needs and emotional needs and your self-esteem needs. And so when you can do that to yourself, then it's anything else is just, it's like the candles on the cake. Like you've got the cake, you've got the icing. Other people, these kinds of things, or a job that you love, or kind of these extra things, they aren't who you are. They're the candles on the cake. And so when we make them the candles on the cake, the beauty in that is we're no longer relying on them for so much. We're not like, I really like lemon cake, and so you need to be lemon cake, or I'm not going to be satisfied. We're not putting all this pressure. It's sort of like, you know what? You can be you. Like you can be you. And as long as you're treating me, because I know how to get my needs met. I live in this attitude of abundance. I realize that there's lots of empowering, encouraging, like-minded people out there. So because I realize that, I'm not going to settle for crumbs. I'm not going to stand to be mistreated. So I can still allow people in my life that, maybe not see things exactly the same way as me, but as long as they're treating me with dignity and respect, they can come into my life and I can enjoy them for who they are and not feel a need to change them in order to make myself try to feel a certain way, if that makes sense. Because you know how to you've got enough of a kind of a multifaceted life that you're not, all of your hopes and dreams and expectations and wants and needs, all of that's not tied up in somebody else. Your self-love, your self-esteem, your attractiveness, your relationship with yourself, that's not tied up in another person at all. It's, you own that 100%. And so when you do that, when you get back in alignment and you're like, I know how to make myself feel good. I know who I am and what I'm about, and that I have value and I have dignity and I have worth and that I am enough. When you can, and it can take time, but when you get to that place where you really truly love yourself, because that's what it is it's accepting yourself, being like, I have strengths, I have weaknesses, like there's a lot of things that I'm not good at or that you're not good at, but embracing ourselves for who we are. When we can do that, then we can just breathe and we can relate to people in a more like authentic way, because we're being authentic and we're not trying to get them to be anything other than we are or other than they are in order for us to enjoy our life, if that makes sense. So I hope that helps. Okay, here's one from, real quick too. Sally, I think that was the name she used. Sally? Yes, Sally is from Istanbul, Turkey. And I just wanted to add, okay, so when I was going through like getting these questions, I don't know if you guys have ever heard or if you remember the song, what is it? Istanbul, Not Constantinople, by the group They Might Be Giants. Fantastic song. If you get a chance, you should totally YouTube it, because it's a great song. And it's a lot of fun. So anyways, I got the email and it said Istanbul, and I've had that song stuck in my head like all day today. Just as a side note. Okay, this is from Fiona, and Fiona says, Dana, there is no awareness or groups that fit with ambient abuse. I was in this relationship for 10 years, and the thing is, I don't feel like I actually belong to any support group. Whilst it's similar and supportively helpful, I still feel like an alien. I feel like a square peg trying to fit into a round hole. I am speechless with gratitude with your extraordinary efforts to help others. I am currently nearing the end of a family court battle, which he began out of the blue for no truthful reason. It's just bitterness and twisted, calculated, maliciously and malevolently outright lies. It's been 18 months now, and I've not been able to be a mom, just a very distant mother, restrained by court orders. Life as my little girl and I knew it is gone forever. She begs and pleads with me to help her and to rescue her. The pain and the torment and the cruelty peeling off my baby, kicking and screaming, telling her I can't help you, and sending her back to her father is awful. Okay, so you might find that a group dealing with parental alienation is more in alignment for what you're going through right now, because this is definitely what it sounds like. And so when you're talking about ambient abuse, what that's really about is it's more covert abuse. It's abuse. So the word covert means anything that's hidden or less outright. And so, but of course, it's one of those things like the more you have terminology for this, and the more you're familiar with it, it becomes less and less covert, and it becomes a lot more obvious. So there's a couple books that I would highly recommend, two of which, one of which talks a lot about parental alienation, and it's fantastic. It's called Divorce Poison by Richard Warshak, and you can find out more about this book and then the other one I'm going to talk about here in a second in my book club. So if you go to my website and go to book club, you can see all of the different books that we've read. So I definitely would check that book out, because it's fantastic, and I think it's important to read about now so you can start preparing for this, because if he is malicious and manipulative, then it's good to know, kind of getting a plan for what you're getting into with this. The second book is called The Verbally Abusive Relationship by Patricia Evans, and it's really fantastic. She goes into into specifics as far as what, emotional and verbal abuse. So kind of more of like the subtle put downs, the subtle like grinding down, the subtle shifts, the conversation shifts. I think there's like 15 or 16 different main types of verbal abuse that she goes into depth with. And it's fantastic. It's just so validating because you see that and you're like, okay, that's what that is. I never realized that was a problem. Like, I get it now. It very, very, very eye-opening book. So, and as far as being in different support groups and feeling like you're an alien or that you don't quite fit in, what I have found is that most people in abuse support groups they might be primarily talking about their relationship with their ex, and more of like the outright kind of behavior, like cheating or stealing. But if you're talking more about like just the subtle put downs, odds are they've encountered that as well, but they're more focused on the more painful, the more immediate type things. They may or may not have gotten to the place where they're starting to see kind of the little subtleties of that covert abuse, like because it's so subtle that many people, you could be in a room with somebody and they could be, partaking in more of this covert abuse. It's the subtle sarcasm, it's the cruel teasing, it's the, put downs, it's the subtle put downs, it's just the pot stirring, it's the triangulating, it's the, forever playing kind of the contrarian, or everything that you say they argue with. So there's, in this book, The Verbally Abusive Relationship, she goes into all of these. So odds are the people in these support groups have experienced this as well. So I think it's worth still bringing up and saying, hey, has anybody else experienced XYZ? And seeing the response that you get, because odds are they have. They might not have even realized, they might not even be to the point where they realize, oh, is that abuse? I just thought I was being too sensitive. So it's worth bringing up. We actually had a gal, I think it was either yesterday or today, who had mentioned something. She's like, I thought this group was primarily for people that were in relationships, and she had an issue, I think it was with her mother, a narcissistic parent. And she's like, I was really hesitant to bring this up because I thought, oh, maybe this isn't the right place, or maybe people aren't going to understand. And she's like, I'm so glad I brought this up because people were chiming in and they're like, oh, yes, I've experienced this too. And here's how I experienced this exact same thing. And so it was just very validating for her. So, okay, let's see. There was a question. Okay, where did it go? There we go. Shania says, hi Dana, I met a new guy and he has many narcissistic signs like love bombing, rushing intimacy, and his voice lacks emotion, but he has Asperger's. How could I tell the difference? I don't know if I would spend time trying to necessarily separate the difference between that. I would focus more on like, what are you looking for in a partner? And does he meet that criteria? Because love bombing is problematic no matter what. It's generally a sign that the person's got some majorly empty buckets and they're relating to another person in a very unhealthy way. It's always unhealthy. Whether the person is a narcissist or codependent or an empath or has Asperger's or is just incredibly lonely, whatever it is, it's problematic because they're not seeing the situation clearly. If you're thinking that this other person is your soulmate and you don't know them, like you've only known them for a few weeks, that's problematic. Just like it's problematic for somebody else to feel that way about us, even though it can feel incredibly flattering and we want it to be true because it's like, oh my gosh, you just think I'm so fantastic. Like, it's so nice to be appreciated, right? But it's really problematic because they're seeing us through rose-colored glasses. We're not going to live up to this idealized version that they have of us. So and just like if we're doing that to somebody else and we're like, this person's amazing, I've met my future husband or my future wife, I've known this person, we've gone on one date and we've talked, for like 60 hours on the phone, I feel this intense connection. Generally, there's not an intense connection there. It's the illusion of an intense connection because we're so starved out for a sincere connection. It's that mistaking intensity for sincerity. Very easy to do. So, rushing intimacy. So, this goes back to you maintaining your power and control. And so, part of that, a big part of that, is you set the pace. And this isn't just for like any, other reason other than you maintaining power and control. Like, this is about you. This is about your life. This is something that we really ideally would be talking to children about and encouraging them to do the same. Because it's very easy for other people to start a whirlwind situation, but that whirlwind only picks up speed if we get sucked into it. So if we realize, you know what, things are moving a little too fast. Like, I'm not okay with kissing a person on the first date or sleeping with a person on the first date or the third date or the whatever. You decide what you want. And your boundaries, if a person really wants to be with you, they will respect your boundaries. They're not going to continue to push them. So it doesn't matter if a person is kind of what label you want to give it. If they have behavior that you're like, you know what, this is not sitting well with me, it's a problem. And so then what you would do, or what you could do, is back up things a little bit and decide, you know what, this whirlwind is kicking up and I don't want to make this person the whole cake. I want to make this person the candles on my cake. So I'm going to keep my life. I'm going to keep my friends. I'm going to keep my hobbies. This person's going to be I'm going to appreciate them for what they are, but I'm not going to be on the phone for 6 hours a day. I'm not going to be seeing this person every single day of the week. I'm not going to be getting caught up in this whirlwind and so quick to make them my whole world, because I have a life and and it's not that you're afraid of getting hurt. It's just, this is getting in alignment with you and not looking outside of yourself for another person to make you feel a certain way, to make you feel loved, to make you feel important or valuable. It's about you being able to give that to yourself and then being able to have, healthy bonds and healthy relationships with other people, if that kind of makes sense. So thinking about what do you want in a partner, and then kind of reverse engineering it and realizing if it's not for you, it's not for you. It doesn't make him necessarily bad or wrong. It's just, if it's not for you, it's not for you. So, okay. Lori, that's a great question. Lori asks, do most of us here come from families where all of this started? I mean, how common is it for somebody from a perfectly happy, normal family to pick a narcissist? So I think the prevailing theory is that people tend to, repeat patterns based on like their unhealed childhood wounds. So we tend to date somebody that's kind of like one of our parents, for better or for worse. I think that there's a lot of truth to that to some extent. However, with narcissists, so here's the problem. So if a person comes from like a dysfunctional home, and like estimates are anywhere from like 85% of people do. I would say it's probably higher than that. But let's just say 85%, okay? Come from some sort of dysfunctional home. The other 15%, if they didn't come from any dysfunction, then odds are, okay, so if you come from a dysfunctional home, odds are a lot of things are not discussed, right? Like probably healthy boundaries, healthy standards, self-esteem, healthy, open, honest, sincere, solutions-oriented communication. What is love? What is, versus lust? What elements make a relationship work? What elements are important in a marriage? How to kind of what to look for in a partner, the purpose of dating. A lot of this stuff, it's for sure not taught in dysfunctional homes, and I don't think it's really taught in healthy homes either. That's the kicker. So because this stuff isn't taught, a lot of people get tangled up with narcissistic people of a wide range. So if a person grew up in a home where, let's say, they were yelled at or put down or, called names or, given the silent treatment, that kind of stuff, it may or may not register as problematic for them. And so they might grow up and they might get in relationships and think to themselves, oh, well, this person yells, but at least they don't call me names. So it's not that bad. Or if a person grew up in a home where they were physically abused, then they might get into a relationship and think, well, okay, this person yells and name calls, but at least they don't physically abuse me. They don't hit. It could be worse. I think that's the common justification, right? Well, it could always be worse. And nobody's perfect. Those are the two common justifications, I think, for problematic situations in general. So if a person comes from a problematic, like a dysfunctional home, what's problematic is probably not going to register as problematic. However, what's problematic isn't always so overt. Sometimes it's very covert. So you have more of like kind of like the sociopathic behavior where they can be Prince or Princess Charming, and the next thing you know, they've drained your bank account or they've, done some like outrageous behavior and they've run off. And there's always red flags. It's whether or not we're in tune enough to see them for what they are. And unfortunately, because this stuff's not taught, or not taught as much as it really needs to be, or discussed as much as it needs to be, most people are going to fall for these red flags. I mean, it's sort of like, people get tangled up with manipulative people all the time, like with Bernie Madoff, or with, financial scams, or with online dating scammers, or with, problematic people in any number of ways, with cult leaders or Hitler or dictators, these kinds of things, overtly abusive people or covertly abusive people. And a lot of what it really boils down to is if we're not aware that we all have these buckets, right? The buckets of physical needs and emotional needs, and then the bucket of stability. We all have these buckets. If they're not filled to a certain level, we quit thinking clearly. But we think that we are. Like that's the catch, right? Like that's the challenge of it all, is we think we are. We think we're being very rational human beings. But the reality is we're not being rational, we're being rationalizing. We're not seeing the situation clearly. That's how people get tangled up in gangs and in cults and with, mass murdering dictators, and they take part in all kinds of things, get involved in, horrifically abusive relationships and all this. It's not just because they came from a dysfunctional home. It's because a person can come from a really fantastic home and then get tangled up with an online dating scammer down the road. And why? Because here's the thing. All narcissistic people, all emotional manipulators, they manipulate emotions. That's what they do. And they do this. They target supply So they view people as supply. They target supply, and then they manipulate emotions in order to get what they want. And once you are aware of this, like once you see it, you're like, okay, I get it. And then you're going to quit getting tangled up in it. But if a person doesn't have, if they don't know this, right, then they're probably going to continue getting tangled up with them. So I think there's more elements at play than just a person's home environment. Because a person could grow up on Sunnybrook Farm, but if they've been married for 50 years and their spouse dies, the odds of them getting tangled up with the first love bombing, charismatic person that showers them with attention and affection is really high. And the vast majority of time, the people that do that are abusive. So they might have had a wonderful childhood, they might have had a wonderful marriage, but now if their spouse dies, now they're incredibly lonely. And here comes this prince or princess charming who's telling them, making them feel so loved and so important that they're going to just eat that up because they're starved out for it. So it has more to do with those empty buckets, some of which may or may not be empty from childhood, but they could be full in childhood, but then be emptied later on in life. It's just something that we need to be aware of at all times, and be aware of, what are our current vulnerabilities at this stage in our life, because we're all human. We're all going to have vulnerabilities. It's a part of being human, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's how we relate to other people. It's kind of how empathy and compassion is developed. But where it becomes problematic is if we're walking around with these vulnerabilities and don't realize it, then odds are we're making really terrible decisions and we don't even realize it. It's sort of like when a person gets divorced or goes through a major life change like a death, and they, quote unquote, they say, don't make any major life changes for a year. Don't buy a house, don't sell a house, don't start a new job, don't move across the country. Don't just stay in a holding pattern until that shock of that wears off, because it's really easy for a major life event to make a person be like, I need to do something totally different. And they're just kind of in this like scramble, but they don't even realize it. In their mind, they're thinking totally clearly. They're like, I am going to move across the country and I am going to become a race car driver. And then they do this, and then they kind of, things calm down for them and they're like, oh my gosh, what have I done? Like, I just spent my whole life savings on a race car, and like, what was I thinking? So it's just being aware that these things happen. They happen to all of us, and to just be aware of them. Be aware of all of our vulnerabilities. So, right. MT says, I came from an abusive, dysfunctional childhood. I became an empath and more on the codependent side. The narcissist had the same childhood and decided to abuse people. Yes. I think that kind of goes back to, everybody just starts off from day one wired a little bit differently. Like how we perceive things and our level of, what they would say, like resiliency, and our degree of, what is it called? What's the word I'm looking for? Like, I don't want to say like likability, but kind of the degree in which, like compassion and empathy and relatability maybe is the word I'm looking for. Like, we all have different levels of that. And some of us, so for those of you that haven't heard the term empath, that can be very eye-opening too. So there's a difference between codependency and being an empath. Oftentimes I think those two go hand in hand, but they don't have to. So, and I think for me anyhow, this made it easier to separate out the two, because being empathic was a very big part of who I am, and that was kind of my understanding of myself. I'm like, these are a lot of my core personality traits, and I'm not sure how much of that, like, I want to get into a healthy alignment, but I'm not sure what traits need to be worked on, like what's problematic and like what's not. And so learning about empaths, it was really wild. really wild. It reminds me of that movie, The Never-Ending Story, when the little boy is reading the book and it's like talking about him, and he kind of starts like looking around like, is this talking about me? And then he starts realizing in the book, like, yeah, this is me. That's how I felt when I began learning about empath stuff. And my guess would be probably a lot of you guys would feel the same way if you started reading about it. So, like, for example, empaths tend to kind of emotionally read situations pretty well and be able to relate emotionally to kind of, I think, all living creatures, like animals and people. And they don't like pain, they don't like violence. So they don't like to watch the news or horror movies or to be, any kind of like disturbing stuff. Like, it really bothers them to a core level. Oftentimes I think they're probably vegetarian or vegan. Oh, what are some other character traits? Not a big fan of crowds. They tend to be more in the realm of understanding things more like emotionally than probably than anything else. So just kind of interpreting the environment in a different way. And the cool thing is kind of realizing, okay, what do I need to do to kind of get more in alignment? And what part of me is this just kind of me? Like, for example, I haven't had a TV in probably, I don't even know, like 8 years now. And I love it. So obviously I don't watch the news. I don't watch horror movies. I don't like disturbing stuff like that. It really bothers me at a core level, and I stay disturbed for sometimes years after watching certain things. I don't like that. It doesn't mean that have my head in the sand or that I don't know that these things exist. I'm very aware that they are out there. I just am very particular about what I'm feeding my brain. And I'm not a big fan of crowds. And I do tend to take on, feel like a lot of emotion with animals and with people. I went vegetarian when I was like 13 and had long periods of time where I was vegan, and then I don't know. And that's something I'd like to get back to because that feels more in alignment for me. But, just kind of separating out the difference between, it's like codependency is more of like these very unhealthy, like one-sided dynamics where it's a lot of these empathic traits that are taken to a point of being very problematic. And the cool thing is once you can get more in alignment with that, it doesn't become codependent. It just becomes, now you're like an empowered empath, and then it can be really cool. Yes. Yes. MT says, Dana, that's me. I'm vegan. I understand animals and people on an almost telepathic level, and emotionally, I feel the world's pain. Yes. That was my thing. So at an early age, my grandmother moved in with us. Well, I was 15. My brother has dyslexia. So I grew up, and he's always been like my favorite person. Like, I just adore my baby brother. And so I think that feeling of like protectiveness and kind of learning to gauge his emotions and wanting to just take care of him is probably what sparked a lot of that. And then having my grandmother who had dementia, really is what it was. Dementia moved into this when I was 15. And then, as that began to progress into more Alzheimer's, when she lost her ability to speak and communicate, and I felt like, I could get her to take a shower, I could get her to eat, and had that ability. And so then I worked in group homes for many years. I taught at-risk kids. I'm a nurse now. I work with chronically, mentally ill and personality disordered people. And it's just kind of that ability. And I worked at a domestic violence shelter. So working with people that have gone through some sort of trauma or that are not able, that like mainstream stuff doesn't click with them. And being able to kind of establish that connection, and has always been something that's kind of come very naturally and easy for me. Oh, another sign of empaths is people open up to you like pretty much right away, and total strangers will just tell you things that they don't normally tell other people. And yeah, I think probably a lot of us can relate to that. So I think empaths, Nightingale asks, does empaths change to a codependent? I think very easily can, because we can be so empathic to a point where it sounds weird almost, but where we're not in tune with ourselves because we're so in tune with other people. A lot of people might say, okay, that's more like the codependency, but I think for a lot of us empaths, we've always just kind of been that way. And I don't know, and sometimes I think that can come from trauma, and sometimes I think we're just kind of born like that. I feel like I was probably like that from a very, very early age. I don't know. I don't remember ever being anything different than that. So, yeah, it's interesting, like the commonalities. Like seriously, read up on like empath stuff. It's so weird. Like, oh my gosh. And then it's really cool because then you can start connecting with other like-minded people, and it's that validation of I'm not crazy. Everybody thinks I'm crazy because I don't have a TV. I used to get so much grief for years, so much grief about that. Because they're like, what do you mean you don't watch the news? Like, what do you mean you don't do, like, you can't just not do that. Like, people would get so mad at me. And I'm like, no, it's great. Like, I love my life. Like, I have a lot of peace in my life, and I love to read, and I've been on a big YouTube watching kick lately, and I watch Eckhart Tolle, and I do these different things, and, you know, it, it's great. Like and it just kind of not, just taking a break from like the status quo and just being like, you know what, that's not me. Like, I'm going to go do this. When I became vegetarian, I grew up in Houston. So like that was not even a thing there, especially that, what was this, like 20 something years ago. And I was really, opposed to animal testing. And I remember, begging my dad to go. We had like one Whole Foods in Houston, and this had just come out. And I was like, we need to get this makeup that, that was beauty without cruelty, and they don't test on animals. And this is so important, and we just need to do this. And everybody just thought I was nuts because that was not the mentality back then. And, so it's weird. It's been weird. And then going through all of this narcissistic abuse and all of this, and then meeting all these other people, and it's sort of like we all have so much in common. Like, where have you guys been? And then I don't know. It's weird. It's weird, and it's cool. So, let's see. I have a couple more questions. Oh, I love that. Okay, Shania, great question. Says Dana, I am an empath and psychic, but I'm also a codependent. So as an empath, we are supposed to be able to read people. So why don't we see through narcissists? Great question. It's because, here's my theory on it, is because they're mirroring us back to ourselves. I remember a friend of mine who actually encouraged me to start a podcast like 2.5 years ago, but I didn't know how to start a podcast, so I started a YouTube channel instead. But she had asked me, she said, that's so interesting that you got tangled up with Jack in particular. She's like, you value realness so much, and here you get tangled up with a guy who is who's not real. Like, he couldn't be any less real. And I hadn't thought about that in that way before. And so when she said that, I was like, wow. And then I was that really rattled me, because it's like, I feel like I really do a great job with assessing kind of the situation and perceiving people in a fairly balanced way. And so the fact that I really misread that situation was very, very disturbing to me. But I really do believe that the reason me and probably a lot of us, it's because they're mirroring us back. So, and if I think back on it, it's like, yeah, everything that I really liked about Jack is he was trying to be everything that I was needing or wanting in a perfect partner. We would listen to Eckhart Tolle together. We would listen to the very similar. I mean, I just thought, well, he's my soulmate because he just likes everything that I like. Like, and I just thought that was sincere. It didn't dawn on me until many years later. Oh no, it's not sincere. This all changes based on who his target is. So for me, he might have been super into Eckhart Tolle and super into reading books and sitting around the fire and these lengthy discussions and all of these things. But for the next person, it might be country music and going line dancing 5 nights a week and being a totally different person. So they mirror us. But now that's the thing, like now that I know that that's a thing, to that extent, I get it. And I can see it. I'm a lot more in, same with you guys too. Like once you start seeing like, oh, this is what this is. Next time somebody's doing it, or next time it happens, you're going to be less likely to get caught up with it because you're able to slow things down and be like, okay, this is what this is. This is love bombing. This is mirroring. This is rushing intimacy. This is the whirlwind. I've been here before. I know what this looks like. I know how this feels. I'm going to distance myself. I'm going to back things up, slow things down to a point that I'm comfortable with them moving. So, and the other thing too so part of that is why do we not see through them initially? But then also, I think it's oftentimes a reason why people stay, because we're forever. So they're projecting all of their, garbage, all of their unresolved stuff onto us, but we're also projecting all of our like kind of, that malignant optimism, like all of our goodness and stuff onto them. So it's weird when you think about it, like they're not really seeing us clearly and we're not really seeing them clearly either. Because all anybody knows is themselves. So if we think we're the baseline for normal, if we're like, well, if I really say that I'm sorry, then I must be sorry. So if I was sorry, I would want somebody to treat me like I'm going to treat them. But if we're forever doing that and we have like a solid moral compass and we are, a good person and we're sincere and we're truly remorseful and we're all of these things, if we get tangled up with a person who's not any of those things, it's going to take us a long time to see it because we're seeing them through the lens of what we think is possible or how we would react, not actually what they are doing. And that's a very powerful and crushing realization for a lot of people to come to, because it's totally jarring to realize how long we were manipulated and misled and how much we misread that situation. So, yeah, intense. Scott says, why didn't the narcissist's family warn me about her? I'm sure they knew what she was. Well, but let's just back up. So, they might have known she had some problematic behavior. I think it's difficult to see the extent of that if it's a family member. So they might have been in denial about how bad it really was. I doubt that they thought of it in terms of like, this is like a personality disorder, right? They might have just thought like, oh, well, she's just, you know, she just, you know, lies and cheats and steals and abuses and uses and exploits people, but she's not a narcissist. Like, you know, that's just how she is. Like, so people justify things in all kinds of ways. And again, it doesn't matter if she's got a personality disorder or not. Like, it's what matters is the behavior. If they knew she had this kind of behavior, they were probably minimizing it and justifying it and not wanting to see it for what it is. Because if we actually see a situation clearly, then that means we have to do something different. And most people, especially if they're family, they don't want to do anything different. They don't want to rock the boat. So it's just easier for them to not deal with it. Or they could be equally as dysfunctional and they're like, that's how we all are, you know? So it doesn't register for them. In addition to that, if they had tried to warn you, odds are, realistically speaking, you probably wouldn't have listened. Most people don't, especially if there's that love bombing phase where we all feel, when you're going through it, you're like, I feel so special, unique, and different. I know, you know, her ex-boyfriend or her mom is telling me that she's a psycho, but that's just them. I bet the ex-boyfriend's bitter. And then, of course, she's going to tell you stories about how her mom hates her or her mom was abusive or what have you. And because it's really hard to think clearly when you're being love bombed. And if you've never experienced love bombing before, and especially if you never realized that it was problematic before, it's really easy to think, I'm special, unique, and different. The ex is a problem. The mom is a problem. Everybody else is a problem. But what we have is real. What we have can conquer all. And, you know, it's unfortunately, it all kind of oftentimes learn the hard way. Yeah, Truth Seeker says, unfortunately, the outside world is the matrix. They're just not awake to this. Oh, completely. Completely. And there's so many different levels to the matrix. That's what's really wild about that. Like, it's just so exciting. It's just so exciting. I wish I had more time where I could just dive into this stuff full time. But a big jump into realizing, whoa, like matrix, red pill kind of stuff is the understanding of problematic behavior and like narcissism and there's problematic behavior in general. Like that's just game changing. And then I think the next step to that is getting back in tune, back in alignment with your emotions. And then possibly like the next step after that is realizing that all of your emotions are working towards your highest and greatest good and they're bringing you messages, and to try to embrace them instead of run from them. And then the next, that's huge. Like that's huge because we spend, especially in the United States, so much of our time is spent being like, I'm really anxious. I need to stop being anxious. Like I need to take a pill to stop being anxious. I need to take a pill to stop being depressed instead of, so we're getting better at numbing our feelings instead of paying attention to our feelings. Because the way we perceive feelings, we're perceiving them as like bad and good, and they're not bad and good. They're pleasant and unpleasant, but they're both working towards our highest and greatest good. They are our friend. Our body is designed to keep us alive and for growth, emotional growth and physical growth. So and then I think kind of the next step beyond that is separating the emotion from the event and realizing, okay, now that we're back in alignment with all of these different emotions, and I realize I have pleasant emotions and I have unpleasant emotions, they're all working towards me. Now I can use these towards my highest and greatest good. And what's really cool is I don't need to wait for something to happen in order to feel a certain way. Like I don't need to wait until I make a certain amount of money or have a certain career or a certain lover or a certain hobby in order to feel a certain way. Like I can just feel that way now. And then if this other person comes into being, then, or this other situation comes into being, that's just the candles on the cake, but I'm already having these feelings. Because that's the other thing too with this, is realizing that whatever, when we're at that place where we're like, I want the event in order to feel a certain way. I want the big fancy house in order to feel successful or in order to feel significant. It's the emotion we're after. It's never the stuff. It never is. That's the kicker. But a lot of people get stuck there. They're like, nope, this is what this means. It means it's a fancy car, or it's a fancy house, or it's a, a really good looking spouse, or it's these things. It's not. It's the emotion that we think that's going to get us. And so if you can realize, okay, what is the emotion that I think having this certain car or this certain spouse or this certain house, what is that emotion that I think that's going to bring me? And then asking yourself, what else could I do to start feeling that way now? So if you really want this life where you're, I don't know, having dinner parties on a regular basis, or you have this amazing spouse, or what have you, if you dig deeper and you're like, I really want this feeling of connection. Like, that's what I'm really wanting, is this feeling of connection. Then thinking, okay, how can you go about getting that feeling of connection now? Instead of waiting for this event to manifest, how can I start feeling this way now? And what's weird about that is, this is kind of the next level, is once you start tapping into those feelings, then this other stuff oftentimes does start showing up in your existence, because it's really hard to feel rotten, to walk around just feeling rotten, and to have good things joyous things start surfacing in your life. But if you're not waiting for something to make you feel joyful, if you can feel joyful, then other experiences that mirror that existing emotion are going to start showing up. It's weird. And a lot of that sounds super hippie woo-woo. I get that. A lot of it really does have to do with our brain and just kind of how we're wired and our perception of reality. It's a total game changer. So, sorry, that was maybe kind of rambling. Let's see. Okay, I've got some other questions here. All right. This is from Zola. Zola says, hi, Dana. I wonder if you could help me understand what's going on. I don't know if my ex is a narcissist, but I strongly suspect he is. He came on very strong with love bombing. He was very charming, and etc. I later uncovered many lies, which he totally denied, even with proof, that's called gaslighting, just FYI. He was corresponding with an old girlfriend who he left town to be with and married her fairly quickly. There were circumstances that kept us from being together. He wanted me to move in with him right away, and I said no. He took it very badly. He is very emotional. He lashes out, and he could be borderline. I don't know. Not too long after this, he moved out of town and ended up getting married to his old high school sweetheart. I was devastated and went no contact for a couple of years, but I still was having problems with how things happened with him. Anyways, over the last 2 years, I saw he was posting constantly on Facebook selfies of the two of them on vacation, visiting places, traveling all over, romantic getaways, him saying how in love he was with her. People were commenting on what a sweet love story that he found happiness with his old girlfriend and so on. Well, guess what? He contacted me last week by email. I did not answer. Oh, I did answer. Here's what I'm confused about. If he's so happy, why is he contacting me? I have to admit that I answered emails and I went back and forth for about a week. He let me know how he thought about me all the time. So why is he contacting me if he's so happy? Okay, so narcissistic people like this, emotional manipulators, by whatever name that you want to call them, this is so common. So the best, because they're all about appearances, right? It's all about getting that respect and admiration from other people. So it's very common for them to go on Facebook and put on this huge show to play the part of like the world's perfect spouse or the world's perfect parent. It's all for show. It's all to get those comments, to be like, oh, you're so lucky you found this amazing man. He just would walk over broken glass for you, right? it's just all to get people to think so highly of him. Because really, if you really feel that way about somebody, you don't need to post it all over Facebook. It's so attention seeking, right? And there's a reason for that, because it's like, it's all for attention. So it's not sincere. So everything they do is insincere. It's all about using people. It's using, abusing, and exploiting other people. So he may or may not like be happy, but I think that the deeper question is he sincerely bonded with this other woman? And then obviously the answer would be no, because he's now contacting you and telling you how he thinks about you all the time. That's not the actions of a person who actually loves the person they're married to. That's the actions of a total jerk who's looking to have an affair, is what that's about. So, I wouldn't read into it other than that. Like, this shows you his character, is what it is. And it really, really shows you his character, because you're seeing the hypocrisy there. You're seeing all of this on Facebook where he's like, I love her so much. We're so happy. Awesome life. Awesome spouse. Like, hashtag awesome life, right? Then he's emailing you being like, babe, like, you're everything I ever wanted. I miss you so much. And I just can't stop thinking about you. Like, you're seeing two polar opposites of two very different sides of him. And like, trust when somebody shows you their true colors like that, pay attention to that. It's not that he's somehow unhappy in his marriage. He's just looking to have his cake and eat it too. He thinks he's got her on lock because he's being everything that she needs him to be. He's being that Prince Charming, but he's also trying to get more supply on the side. So, okay. Here's a good one. Hi, Dana. Thank you so much for all the work that you do. Here is a question for the live stream. It's a bit long, so if you don't have to answer all of it, just any insights would be amazing. The suspected narcissist in my life is my older brother. Is it possible for a narcissist to admit that they are insecure? He recently wrote a massive Facebook post about how he's full of self-doubt and how he's been inspired to be a better person. It's really thrown me off because I'm back to thinking I'm the crazy one. Every time I seem to make progress with my self-esteem, I keep getting sucked back in to believing every negative thing about him and his wife that they say about me. I can only seem to see myself how they see me. I feel like a pathetic child. I've tried all sorts of affirmations, activities, from healing the shame that binds you and also educating myself about narcissistic personality disorder, but nothing is sinking in. I'm even starting to get the sensation in my chest where I want to rip myself open and step outside of myself. I can't live with myself. I am so disgusted with who I am. How do I shift these deeply ingrained beliefs? Am I not being persistent enough, or is it because these people are still in my life? Also, do you often see narcissists interested in personal growth, or could I have got it wrong that he is narcissistic? He calls me weird, crazy. He says I'm the weirdest person he's ever met. He used to call me at work just to laugh at the way I answered the phone and tell me I need to answer it differently. Tells me any achievement I reach is because I have big boobs, or he gets enraged if I like certain TV shows that he also watches, and he'll scrunch up his face and say, "Oh, geez, you like that show too?" And then he storms off. He talks over me when I'm mid-sentence. He opens my phone and looks at what apps I've got or reads my messages, and he enjoys watching me get bullied at school and would occasionally join in or would stare at me in disgust if I said hello. I know this is not normal behavior, but is it possible for a non-narcissist to act like this? Why would he be admitting he is insecure and wants to better himself? Do you think it's just more mind games? Would it be directed at me to make me feel crazy? If you don't have time to answer my question, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for all the information you put out there for us. Sarah. So great questions, Sarah, and thank you for your kind words too. So these are some great examples of what we were talking about earlier about kind of that covert abuse, where it's so subtle that it makes a person wonder, like, maybe I am the problem. Maybe, like, is this weird that this bothers me, that this person calls me at work just to make fun of how I answer the phone? Am I being too sensitive? All of this stuff, it grinds a person down over time. So again, labels aside, whether or not he's, a narcissist or not, what we do know is that his behavior is incredibly narcissistic. It's very much about power and control over you, and that's abusive and it's highly problematic. So the fact that you feel like you want to rip yourself open and step outside of yourself, and that you're so disgusted with who you are, is a very powerful sign to distance yourself from this person and his wife. It doesn't have to be anything that you don't want it to be. But at a minimum, for now, I would say distance yourself. Pay attention to how you feel once you get away from that and you start getting some peace in your life. I would strongly encourage you to read the book, The Verbally Abusive Relationship. I think that'll bring a lot of light and understanding to the more subtle forms of verbally abusive behavior, which is what you're experiencing. And yes, just to validate you, every single thing that you said in here is highly problematic. And it's not uncommon for them to go back and forth. And so in this dynamic, because he's your brother, right? It's the equivalent of a spouse or a boyfriend or a girlfriend saying, I'll change, I want to get better, I'm really sorry, this time will be different. So you're experiencing like the sibling version of that, of I really want to improve myself. I'm really dedicated to personal growth. I want to change. I want things to be different. But intention isn't enough, right? It's actions that lead to results that matter. So just like I could intend to lose weight, I could be motivated to lose weight. If I don't actually change the food that I'm eating or change how much exercise I'm getting, that motivation isn't enough. Like, it has to be followed up with consistent action over a long enough period of time that actually leads to results. Just like a person, like a narcissistic person could be like, I'm really motivated to make change. They get into therapy and then they don't actually do any work. A person can go to therapy for years and that needle of change doesn't move an inch. So if they're not actually willing to slow down their behavior, to become introspective, to make changes, and of course the only way to tell this is over time, to see, are they actually changing, or is this more of the same? So if they're not changing, if it's more of the same, then there's your answer. Like, they're not actually changing. They're doing a great job of giving a bunch of lip service to change, but they're not changing. As far as distancing yourself too, really realizing you do not need to be somebody else's verbal or emotional punching bag, because that's what you are for him. He is a bully. Like, you were bullied, but he's also bullying you now. It's just in a lot more, some subtle and some not so subtle ways. Everything that you said, it's just undermining, it's devaluing, it's that subtle grinding down. Oh, you got a job. Oh, it's because you have big boobs. Oh, you had some sort of success in your life. Oh, I'm going to make fun of you for this, or it's that slow grinding down, and it's abusive. That's why you're feeling the way that you're feeling. So I would encourage you to get into some support groups if you haven't already, and to read that book. I think that'll give you a ton of clarity. And then, I don't know, I'd be curious to hear back. I'm always curious to hear back from people. After you get into a support group for a little bit, kind of what aha moments are you having? And what kind of clarity or validation are you getting? Okay. This is, hold on a second. This is from Anonymous, He says, it's been almost 9 years since the extremely emotional and mental and physical abusive relationship I had ended. I thought time would help me mentally get stronger, but I have not really healed at all, nor have I gained any mental strength. I honestly am still as broken as ever. I could never have afforded counseling. I do know I need help to gain the tools to heal and to overcome the mental effects of what I went through. I haven't really ever been able to function halfway on a daily basis, socially, confidently, etc. I need help getting help. I am unemployed. How can I get into therapy or counseling? So, okay, there's a couple ideas here. At a minimum, I would strongly encourage you to get into some support groups. They're free. And I think you're going to get a lot of validation and clarity and aha moments from them. So that would be a free and easy way to start. That's something that you can do right now. Locally, you could also, if you want to meet with in-person groups, locally there's often groups that are called CODA, and it stands for Codependence Anonymous. Now, I'm not saying that you're codependent, but a lot of the same topics are addressed in there. So, healthy boundaries and, learning to love ourselves and dealing with difficult people by any name that you want to call them. There's a lot that can be gained from going to CODA groups, and those are free, and those are generally worldwide. Consider joining our book club. It's free, and you can find out more information about that at thriveafterabuse.com, and you can read my notes and watch videos from that. The internet is so awesome. So there's so much stuff that's out there on the internet as far as this information goes that I think can really go far as to help a person move towards healing and understanding. There's even videos out there for EFT on YouTube, which is the tapping therapy. And you don't need a therapist to do this. You can do this at home. And it's a series of pressure points. It's kind of like a combination between affirmations and acupuncture. Yes, acupuncture. So you're tapping like these, one is like here, and then one is here, and then here, then here, and then here, and like these different points. And you say certain, and then there's a video out there, and the gal will walk you through it. That's supposed to be really helpful as far as emotion, like releasing kind of the stored emotions in your body. I know it sounds so weird, but a lot of people really report great things with this. So that might be something to consider. You might also want to contact a local domestic violence shelter and see if they offer any type of free counseling. Oftentimes they do. So that might be another avenue to explore. And just kind of FYI for you guys out there in general, this kind of behavior, if you're talking about this person in terms of like narcissist or sociopath or these kinds of things, that oftentimes that's terminology that a lot of counselors, for a wide variety of reasons, don't use. So if you're I would encourage you to talk about what you experienced more in terms of behaviors. So referring to it as like emotional abuse or physical abuse or psychological abuse, and then giving examples. But like we were talking about earlier, I think the most helpful approach is for a person to be in individual counseling and a support group. So you can gain a lot of that validation and clarity in the support group, and then go back to a therapist or a counselor one-on-one and be like, okay, can we sort through these things one-on-one? Another option too is a lot of times, and I get why if a person doesn't want to do this, but a lot of times different religious groups, churches or synagogues or different places have like spiritual counseling there. So that might be an avenue to explore as well. As far as healing goes, this is something that I think a lot of people, and understandably so, can really get kind of hung up with. So it's this idea that healing means that we return to some semblance of who we were. And the reality is that we don't. And at first, a person can really mourn the loss of that, because it's like it can feel like who we were was stolen from us. But life is all about growth. And growth is always accompanied by pain. So it's kind of all of these different situations in life, that we have to kind of overcome and to try to move forward in spite of how unfair it is and how painful it's been and how just completely devastating on so many different levels it's been. So I think realizing that healing doesn't mean that we go back to who we are, but what it means is it's redefining, or maybe defining, who we want to be in this next chapter of our life. So maybe that's more of what it is. Like if you view your life as a book, and okay, this horribly abusive relationship happened in this chapter, in like chapter 6. You're done with that now. Now you're moving on to chapter 7. And so, okay, what's going to be in this chapter? And how are you going to try to make this situation, to move forward in this, and to decide, okay, I'm not going to let this ruin my life, and I'm not going to let this steal any more of my joy. Even if you're like, I have no joy right now and I feel like this has ruined my life. Like just setting that as an intention, and then taking time every day, and even little ways where you might feel really silly for a while at doing this, but taking time to be like, this is bringing me joy. This tea is delicious. This is apple cinnamon tea. This brings me joy. And it's these little tiny victories. If you're like, this brings me joy, damn it. Like, this is you reclaiming your power and control. So whatever those little victories might look like for you. And then over a period of time, because this stuff does take time, this is how you start rebuilding a life that you love. And it's a life of purpose, on purpose. So it's a life of, you have conscious, and that's the beauty of like having your world blown apart. And that's the terror of it too, right? Because you're like, oh my gosh, who am I? Where am I? What happened? How do I even begin to go about picking up the pieces? The beauty in that level of destruction is that you can now start consciously and intentionally deciding which pieces that you're going to rebuild with. And you start questioning everything. Where did I get this belief from? Who do I want to be in this next chapter? Maybe you were raised Christian, or you were raised Jewish, and you're like, do I want to rebuild my life with this belief? Like, is this something that's fundamental to me at this chapter in my life? Maybe it is. Maybe you're like, you know what? This doesn't resonate with me at all. Like, I think I'm going to go explore, I don't know, something totally different, right? And so then this is you making that conscious decision to do something different. Or maybe you're like, okay, maybe you decide to go back to school. Maybe you decide to, cut your hair. Maybe you decide to get sober. Maybe you decide, any number of things. And you're like, okay, this is what I want in this next chapter of my life. It's so powerful when you start doing that. It really, really is. So I'm so sorry that you're suffering so much. I hope that you can find some peace in your life, and I hope that you can find the support and the validation that you're seeking. So just like, hugs to all of you guys. But for those that are really suffering, just please keep moving forward. Like the saying says, if you find yourself in hell, if you find yourself walking in hell, just keep walking. Okay, let's see. Okay, I think I'm going to save some of these questions. Oh my gosh, yeah, it's late. I'm going to save some of these questions for next time. These are some really great questions. So actually, wait, nope, there was one that I wanted. Okay, this is the one that I wanted to end with. I really like this. Okay, this is from River Song. And if I can flip to it. Okay, it says, "Hello, Dana. Thank you for your work, your help, your thoughts, and your so good 2 cents on all the crazy making, so it stops making us crazy. With love, River Song." So the reason I'm bringing this up, I mean, it's a really nice comment, and I appreciate that. So thank you. And the reason I wanted to end with this is because I just want to reinforce that, my job, I feel like my role in all of this, is to help remind you of who you really are. And I talk about behavior in terms of like what gives you energy and what takes energy from you. And it's a very individual thing. So there is no one size fits all. It's all about you knowing you. And that's the gift in this. It's you truly getting in tune with you. So the crazy making, because here's the thing. So all of this crazy making behavior, it's crazy making because you're out of alignment with you. And I think once you are aware of it's crazy making, and once you can pay attention to and know what it means to get back in alignment with you and how that feels, then the crazy making stops. I feel like I'm just kind of, the one on the side of the road. Like, you're the one running the marathon. I'm the one with like the cups of the Gatorade, being like, yeah, don't forget to turn left up there. Like, you can do it. Because it's all about you. It's all about you. Like, this is the journey back to you. It truly, truly is. And the power is within you. You stop the crazy making. I'm just handing you cups of Gatorade. So you guys, you get to rediscover who you are. And it's so awesome, and it's so empowering and exciting for me to be able to go with you on this journey. And I just want you to always know that it's all about you reclaiming the power and control over yourself, and that you can do this, and that you are doing it, and that you're doing a great job. And that's the gift. The gift is learning who you really are and being okay with living that life full out. So, okay. So with that said, thank you guys so much for joining me. We do this every single Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I hope you guys have a fantastic week, and just, you have the power. Like, you have it within you, and you have all of the answers that you're seeking. You really, really do. So whenever you're in doubt, it's a sign to slow down and turn inward. So, okay, guys, you guys take care, and lots of love to you. You are not alone. You are not crazy, and you really can move forward and heal from this. So take care. Have a fantastic week. I'll see you next week. Okay? Bye.